Chapter 1769. Yi Shiwen was speechless as he looked at the girl. Anyway, you should try your best to stir up trouble at this time. It's best if you can destroy this matter. The girl put her hands behind her back and acted like an adult. Yi Shiwen was speechless. Is she all right? Yi Shiwen paused and asked. Of course, she's not all right. She's completely restricted from going out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent me here. The girl looked at Yi Shiwen speechlessly and said. It seemed as if she had nothing to say to Yi Shiwen's words. All right, I won't say much. I can't stay here for long. Otherwise, I'll attract the attention of others. It won't be good if they target you at that time. The girl said. Yi Shiwen wanted to tell her that he had already been targeted. If Yi Shiwen hadn't understood before, then how could he not understand now? Perhaps he had already been targeted at the Space Channel. After all, how could a king-level expert, who had been arranged to guard the Space Channel, be such a reckless person? Yi Shiwen had clearly shown his invitation. However, he was still targeted. This was a problem. Moreover, those envoys from the ancient Phoenix realm who had come to the ancient Baron's continent were obviously targeting him. It wasn't a coincidence. Moreover, this young girl had been able to find him directly. Therefore, he could roughly guess that his existence wasn't a secret in the ancient Phoenix realm. At least, his existence wasn't a secret to those who were interested in it. It didn't matter whether it was a secret or not. Even so, his heart suddenly became vigilant. Originally, he had planned to sneak in quietly and wait for an opportunity to act. However, it seemed that he had been too naive back then. After Feng Ling returned, it was impossible for her to not mention his existence. With how much the Phoenix King valued Hua Menghan, it was impossible for her to ignore this matter. He was afraid that the people of the ancient Phoenix world were constantly targeting him. And this had a lot to do with Hua Menghan's persistent refusal to compromise. He even guessed that these people might have been looking for an excuse to eradicate him. Therefore, they had repeatedly attacked him. It was just that none of them succeeded. If this idea was true, then the situation of his trip to the ancient Phoenix world would be grim. He had originally thought that he wouldn't attract any attention by hiding in the dark. There were so many outstanding elites from various worlds present here. So, he wouldn't be considered as much. However, it seemed that things weren't as simple as he thought. Perhaps many people had been paying attention to his movements. Yi Shiwen became even more low-key after he thought that he might have become the target of other people's surveillance. He didn't even participate in the meetings between the outstanding heroes of various worlds. He closed his door and refused to meet any guests. He began to wholeheartedly wait for the opening of the Nirvana pool 3 days later. 3 days passed by in the blink of an eye. For the elites of the various worlds who were preoccupied with their own thoughts, it was just a blink of an eye. Everyone had gathered together, and the person sent by the ancient Phoenix world was the same female official from before. This female official looked even more dignified than she had been 3 days ago. Distinguished guests, our ancient Phoenix world's Nirvana pool is about to open today. The Nirvana pool is not a gentle place. It's extremely dangerous inside. Over the generations, many heroes of the ancient Phoenix realm have died tragically inside. I hope that everyone can understand this. At the same time, you only have 3 days. After 3 days, you will need to pay the price of half a dragon's vein for every additional day. Only then can you continue. Do you have any questions? The female official swept her gaze across the crowd before she asked in an indifferent tone. Everyone, the Nirvana pool of the ancient Phoenix realm is about to open today. All of you will have the opportunity to complete your Nirvana within the Nirvana pool. Then, she asked in an indifferent manner. Everyone suddenly went into an uproar. They had already anticipated that this matter wouldn't be so simple. However, they hadn't thought that there would be such a disastrous situation. That was because no one could guarantee that this matter wouldn't befall them. Therefore, some people started to hesitate. However, The price of half a dragon vein for one day had made the elites of the various worlds secretly speechless. Even though they were the elite existences in their respective worlds, having half a dragon vein was already considered a lot if one were to talk about their total wealth. Having a dragon vein was already considered to be a great fortune. However, half a dragon vein was required to soak in the nirvana pool for one day. It couldn't be denied that it was a sky-high price. Even so, many of them were willing to give it a try. It was worth it to use half a dragon vein in exchange for an opportunity to make a breakthrough. Moreover, they still had 3 days of free time. Everyone made a ruckus for a while. Then, they quieted down. However, no one withdrew in the end. The ancient Phoenix World's Nirvana Pool. Just this name alone was enough to attract the attention of countless people. It had also attracted their attention, and they couldn't move their eyes away. Since no one wants to withdraw, all the distinguished guests, please follow me, the female official said after she swept her gaze over everyone. Then, his figure disappeared thousands of miles away. Everyone quickly followed him. Everyone present was a person with profound cultivation. In just a moment they had caught up with him. The two people in the forefront were none other than Ao Shiba and Qin Lai. Both of them seemed to be in a race. They didn't give way to each other. They simply didn't want to give in to each other. Soon, everyone arrived outside the imperial city. There was an incomparably huge mountain range that was thousands of miles away. The mountain range was covered with various kinds of enchantments. The entire mountain range was completely enclosed within it. Flowing lights flickered and formed a huge sealed world. After the female official opened the sealed barrier, the moment everyone entered, they immediately felt a terrifying flame covering the sky and covering the earth, as if it wanted to burn through the entire world. Many people were caught off guard. Their bodies were immediately set on fire. They were constantly screaming in pain. Many huge ominous beasts were rolling on the ground. Even the world was trembling. Yi Shiwen's divinity rose automatically in an instant and surrounded him in it. This flame couldn't do anything to him at all. It couldn't even burn through his divinity. But even so, Yi Shiwen could still feel the heat of these flames through the divinity. It was very terrifying. The female official's gaze swept down and glanced at Yi Shiwen. Seeing that he had easily blocked the flames, there was a bit of surprise in her eyes, but it was only a bit of surprise and nothing more. She then said in a cold voice, "Nirvana Pond is inside, please come with me." After saying that, the female official disappeared in the sea of fire. Although many people were in a sorry state at this time, there was no other way since things had come to this point. They could only rush in directly. These flames were extremely terrifying. They were the Nanmingli fire. Even some of the mutants that were born in flames and could devour flames as if it was their daily routine were howling from the heat, let alone the other mutants. They did not dare to use their physical bodies to resist the flames. They took out all kinds of ritual implements to protect themselves and then followed Yi Futian. Only Ao Shiba, Qin Lai, and Yi Shiwen could move freely in this kind of flames. Among them, Ao Shiba and Qin Lai relied on their profound martial power that was far beyond everyone else to resist the flames. Only Yi Shiwen walked in the Nanming mythical fire with his body, as if he didn't care at all. This soon attracted everyone's attention. Although Yi Shiwen hadn't entered the mysterious realm like Ao Shiba and Qin Lai, many people still remembered his performance in their hearts and listed him as a dangerous target. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care anymore. He had thought it through in the past 3 days. He wanted to keep a low profile, but he was afraid that there would be people who wouldn't let him continue to keep a low profile. In that case, he might as well keep a high profile and simply fall in line with those people. The flames blazed in the sky, forming a world of flames. Everyone's heart started to beat like a drum. This place was already so frightening. Let alone the Nirvana Pond. This female official had said that a large number of outstanding individuals had died tragically in the ancient Phoenix realm over the past generations. Perhaps she wasn't just trying to scare them. However, since they had already come here, they naturally had no reason to give up. They gritted their teeth and followed. Puff, puff, puff. A vast and boundless magma pond appeared in front of everyone. It was at least thousands of miles in size. The magma constantly bubbled in this magma pond, and transformed into a fire dragon in the void. It looked like the surface of the sea. The waves of magma were hundreds of meters high. It was exceptionally spectacular. Everyone's mouth and tongue were a little dry. They felt that even their eyebrows were burning. They felt as if all the water in their body was about to evaporate just by looking at it from afar. The temperature inside was probably very shocking. Everyone finally understood why they would suffer a heavy loss after completing the Nirvana pond in such a place. Distinguished guests, I'll say it for the last time. The Nirvana pond is very dangerous. It's best not to go down if you can't ensure your safety. The female official said with an expressionless face. There wasn't the slightest expression on her fair and tender face. She seemed to be accustomed to the hundreds of meters high waves of magma under her feet. So, she didn't find it strange. What's there to say? I've long heard of the Nirvana pond of the ancient Phoenix realm. Qin Lai laughed heartily. His entire body seemed to have turned into a burning man under the contrast of the hot air. He dived into the magma as he spoke. He was instantly submerged in the magma. Everyone couldn't sense his existence anymore. In such a scorching environment, even the divine sense would evaporate in an instant. Nothing would be left. Humph! Aoshiba snorted coldly. He stepped out of a golden light and transformed into a golden dragon. Then, he rushed into the Nirvana pond. Chapter 1770. After Aoshiba also rushed in, everyone looked at each other. They weren't at the profound realm, so they couldn't be as carefree as the other two. Just by standing above the Nirvana pool, they already felt like their eyebrows were on fire. Even breathing felt like they were going to spit out fire. Everyone was sweating profusely, which evaporated in an instant. Humph, you cowards! Haiwia sneered. Above his head, an azure blue water droplet appeared, enveloping his entire body. The water vapor spread out to protect him. Even the sea of flames in the sky couldn't burn through him. Plop! After saying that, a huge collision sound was heard. Haiwia rushed down with the momentum of Mt. Tai. In an instant, the Nirvana pool set off a huge wave of lava that was thousands of meters high. At this time, the leaders of the various forces of the ancient desolate glanced at each other, then followed Haiwia and rushed down. They had already developed to the pinnacle, and this might be their only chance to break into the profound realm. With the current situation of the ancient desolate era, any profound realm expert would have an extraordinary meaning to their clan. Facing the pressure brought by the Abyss Devil Lord, not only was the human race in danger of extinction, but they also weren't any better off. If it wasn't for the fact that the devil race was mainly adjusting and focusing their attacks on the human race, they wouldn't have such a leisurely opportunity. They knew very well that the collision between the two sides could break out at any moment. It was already something that could not be avoided. In a short period of time, the only chance for them to break into the profound realm was this Nirvana pool. However, when everyone was still hesitating, they saw a sharp claw directly grabbing out from the magma pool. On the spot, an expert of the ancient desolate realm was clawed to death. Then, in the magma, he was turned into a pile of charcoal. What's going on? Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Then, they looked at the female official, not knowing what was going on. Everyone, there's no need to panic. It's unknown how many heroes of our ancient Phoenix realm have perished in the Nirvana pool over the past generations. Their vengeful spirits can't be extinguished. Therefore, everyone must be extra careful. The female official says, as long as you can kill 10 vengeful spirits, you can stay in the Nirvana pool for one more day. It turns out that they want us to die. No wonder such a good thing actually opened the Nirvana pool. The thunderous beast's angry roar shook the heavens and the earth, and the power of thunder and lightning spread out. That's right. Like I said, the Nirvana pool is a secret of the ancient Phoenix realm. Even within the ancient Phoenix realm, there are very few people who have the qualifications to enter it. Why would they suddenly open it to us? So it turns out that there's such a secret. That's right, this is basically asking us to die. One after another, the crowd aggressively denounced the female official with an agitated look on their faces. However, the female official's face was still expressionless. She spoke in a neither hurried nor slow manner. Distinguished guests, please don't be impatient. We've already warned you about the dangers inside. As for how you choose, it's up to you. We won't force you. I believe that everyone knows that there's no such thing as a free lunch in the sky. How can there be such a good thing? The female official was very frank. She didn't even have the intention to conceal anything. This Nirvana pool is a precious treasure of my race. However, not everyone can bear it. Many geniuses and heroes of my race have died tragically in it. Their original spirits haven't been extinguished, and have turned into resentful spirit. Every time someone enters, these resentful spirits will come out and cause mischief. Now, the number of resentful spirits is quite large. In fact, there's no lack of mysterious realm resentful spirits among them. This female official didn't have any intention of concealing anything. Instead, everyone quieted down. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. So, it was impossible for them to obtain such a good opportunity so easily. Moreover, the ancient Phoenix world wouldn't make such a losing deal. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. It was no wonder that the ancient Phoenix world had acted out of the norm. They had opened the Nirvana pool to celebrate the prince's wedding. But perhaps it wasn't that simple. Heroes had died tragically in this place, and had turned into resentful spirits one after another. Then, the number of resentful spirits would have accumulated over a long period of time. And the people of the ancient Phoenix world wouldn't have the means to clean them up. Therefore, the elites of the various worlds had come here to help eradicate them. After all, even the tyrannical ancient Phoenix world couldn't casually grab a bunch of king-grade experts. Moreover, it wouldn't be easy to train them. So, it wouldn't be worthwhile to bury them here. On the contrary, the elites of various worlds could use their hands to eradicate these resentful spirits if the Nirvana pool was opened to them. And the ancient Phoenix world wouldn't be involved even if there were casualties. Moreover, they could also use this opportunity to weaken the strength of the various world. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Yi Shiwen finally understood after thinking this. It was no wonder that this matter had been filled with a strange feeling from the beginning to the end. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know what to do. It would be dangerous if they went down. However, they weren't willing to do so. The female official stood calmly on the side. She didn't care about everyone's choice. It seemed as if it didn't matter to her no matter what choice they made. Her gaze swept over everyone, and fell on Yi Shiwen's body. It seemed as if she was waiting to see what choice Yi Shiwen would make. A meaningful smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Yi Shiwen pondered for a moment, and made a decision on the spot. This might be the only opportunity for the heroes of the ancient desolation to enter the mysterious realm in their lifetime. Therefore, they had no choice but to go all out. He didn't have any other choice. This was the only hope for him to enter the mysterious realm in a short time. The prince's wedding would take place soon. And the heavenly Phoenix Maiden's marriage contest would be held after the wedding. Then, the selection of a son-in-law would take place. Whether it was from the information he had obtained before or from his own judgment, Yi Shiwen was afraid that his real opponents would be powerhouses who had already entered the mysterious realm. He was merely a king-grade expert. So, it was absolutely impossible for him to defeat a mysterious realm expert. Only by entering the mysterious realm would he have the opportunity to go all out. He had no other choice. There was no other way out. Compared to going all out in the marriage contest, this was much better than forcibly breaking into the imperial city and taking Hua Menghan away. That would simply be a dead end. There was no other possibility. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate. He didn't even put up any protection and directly stepped into the magma. As soon as he stepped into the magma, he suddenly felt an amazing heat crazily burning his body. Countless cells died in an instant, but at this time, the Phoenix regeneration technique in his body directly operated and continued to repair his body. The terrible pain made Yi Shiwen's expression directly distorted. This magma was much more dangerous than he had imagined. If it were someone else, perhaps they would have been burnt into charcoal in an instant, and all the water in their body would have completely evaporated. Of course, apart from him, it was estimated that no one else would rush into the magma without any protection. Even Ao Shiba of the Dragon Clan, who was known for his physical strength, rushed into the magma with a protective golden light. Otherwise, it would not be nirvana, but a real death wish. Yi Shiwen continued to endure this crazy flame burning his body. Ever since he had successfully cultivated the tyrant body, there were very few people who could hurt him. Not to mention, he was being burned to this state. Nirvana Pond was really extraordinary. If it were an ordinary person, even if he had the tyrant body, he would have died. Only Yi Shiwen had the Phoenix regeneration technique. Not only did he not succumb in this environment, but on the contrary, the Phoenix regeneration technique became even more active, like a dragon swimming in the sea. After Yi Shiwen entered the magma, he entrenched himself in the magma and felt it. Soon, he found that this magma was not the same as ordinary magma. This was a flow of energy, endless power of death, constantly rampaging in it, tearing everything that could be seen. The power of death mixed with the energy of the flame formed this magma. It seemed ordinary, but in fact, it was extremely terrifying. It might be very difficult for ordinary people to feel it, but for Yi Shiwen, who had the yin-yang life and death diagram, whether it was the power of life or the power of death, it could be said to be not unfamiliar, so he could feel it very quickly. The power of yin-yang, life and death, was one of the supreme rules between heaven and earth. No one could avoid this rule. It could only be understood, but not expressed. Hence, the so-called mysterious realm, in other words, could only rely on one's own understanding. An ordinary person would have been at a loss in the face of the scorching power of death. However, Yi Shiwen had already learned the true secret of the mysterious realm from the great firmament seal's tool spirit. The first great realm of the mysterious realm was the power of life. The power of life, the power that all life had. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally understood why it was said that the Nirvana Pond could greatly increase the probability of truly comprehending the mysterious life realm. The real key to breaking into the mysterious life realm was to comprehend the power of life and the law of life. But in this world, whether it was life or death, it was a relative concept. Without life, there would be no death. Without death, there would be no life. Only when life and death were relative would they appear so clear and leave such a deep impression. Only in this place that was filled with the power of death would he be able to truly comprehend the power of life in the shortest time possible. Only by truly comprehending the power of life could he be considered to have truly reached nirvana. Whoosh! Suddenly, a loud whistling sound rang out, and a sharp claw directly grabbed over from the endless magma. Chapter 1771. Walala! A sharp claw directly penetrated through the magma, tearing everything apart and grabbing towards Yi Shiwen. It was as if it wanted to crush Yi Shiwen in an instant. Its speed was extremely fast, and it had already made its move in an instant. In the magma, Yi Shiwen's movements were greatly restricted. Moreover, this magma was not ordinary magma, but it was condensed from the endless power of death and flames. Only at the end of the power of death would the power of life linger, and at the end of the power of life would be the power of death. But even so, Yi Shiwen still reacted quickly. Bang! His hands formed a cross in front of his body to protect himself, and the sharp claw directly grabbed his arm. A huge roar was heard, just like the terrible collision sound of gold and iron. The void was violently distorted, and countless magma was directly crushed. Yi Shiwen's movements in the magma were not as agile as they were outside, and he was directly grabbed and sent flying. He was secretly shocked. What great strength! And at this time, a huge monster directly broke free from the magma and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen looked over and saw a huge phoenix. Its entire body was gloomy, and it was exuding a dense, deathly energy. It was a dead spirit composed entirely of resentful spirits. It opened its scarlet eyes and rushed over to kill him. The body of this phoenix of the dead was extremely flexible in the magma, and it instantly rushed over again. It was like a needle in a needle, and it quickly swept over. Bang! Yi Shiwen directly shot out his palm, and the phoenix of the dead was blasted away, but he himself was also blasted away by the counterforce. His skin continued to be charred layer by layer, and then fell off again, and was healed by the phoenix regeneration technique. Yi Shiwen began to feel bad. If this continued, then it would be really over. He found that in this case, the erosion of the power of death had far exceeded the recovery speed of his phoenix regeneration technique. At this speed, he was afraid that he would not even be able to stay for 3 days. No wonder those people of the ancient Phoenix domain were so kind to open the magma for 3 days. It was said to be 3 days, but in fact, only a few people could persist for 3 days. Not to mention that half of the dragon vein would be consumed after 1 day. For an ordinary person, it was impossible for them to hold on for 3 days. Even he himself was not confident. As time passed, the erosion of the death energy would become more and more serious. If he could not comprehend the life energy in time, he would not be able to continue staying in the nirvana pool. Clang! The angelic sword in his hand swung wildly, and a shocking sword aura swept across the sky, directly slashing down on the undead phoenix on the spot. Poochie! This undead phoenix was split into 2 halves on the spot. Gradually, this undead phoenix began to condense under the replenishment of the death power of the magma. How could I let you recover? Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and the sword light splashed out. It instantly turned into a waterfall, and directly chopped down. Boom! The undead phoenix, which had already been chopped into pieces, exploded into pieces. Yi Shiwen then grabbed the death energy that filled the sky. After he crushed it on the spot, this strange death energy flowed along his wrist and instantly invaded Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen was shocked. He looked again and saw that this death energy was absorbed by the yin-yang life and death diagram in his body. After absorbing this death energy, the death energy in the yin-yang life and death diagram began to slowly strengthen. This made Yi Shiwen slightly startled. Suddenly, he realized that he could not use the yin-yang life and death diagram now. The reason was that the life and death energy in the yin-yang life and death diagram was completely out of balance. The life energy was far stronger than the death energy. There was no way to use it. On the contrary, he had to constantly suppress the yin-yang life and death diagram. However, if he could balance the life and death energy in the yin-yang life and death diagram, he could immediately form an extremely powerful celestial tool. Even if he didn't have to find the fragment of the yin-yang life and death diagram in the hands of the Abyss Devil Lord, he could directly condense a very powerful celestial tool. It could directly surpass a supreme tool. He had thought of this before. However, it was merely a thought. How could the life and death energy within the yin-yang life and death diagram be so easy to find? In fact, it might be impossible to find it without special circumstances. However, he had never imagined that he would discover the death energy within the ancient Phoenix realm. To him, this was definitely good news. Moreover, after the life and death energy in the yin-yang life and death diagram was balanced, it would be much easier for him to comprehend the life and death energy. Under the balance of the death energy, the life energy would not be so violent. This would make it easier for him to comprehend it. In this way, the probability of him entering the mysterious realm would greatly increase. When he thought of this, he immediately became excited. It wasn't easy to absorb the death energy in the magma. This was because the magma contained countless flame energy. If he absorbed all the death energy, he would be burnt to a crisp on the spot. On the contrary, if he absorbed the death energy from the vengeful spirits and the dead spirits, there wouldn't be such risks and side effects. Moreover, the most important thing was that if he wanted to cultivate in the nirvana pool, he would be able to cultivate in the nirvana pool for one more day for every 10 vengeful spirits he killed. It could be said to be killing many birds with one stone. At the thought of this, he no longer hesitated and immediately began to shuttle through the magma that was condensed from the power of death. Every minute and every second, their bodies would be burnt to a crisp, and then instantly restored to their original state. He was enduring extreme pain. In order to enter the profound realm, he couldn't care less about that. With the enlightening mind ancient tree, his mind was in the calmest state, and his mind wouldn't be distorted by the pain. His figure shuttled through the flames and the magma. Countless flames and magma were trying to tear off a layer of his outer skin. Then, he instantly restored it. However, the erosion of the death energy was getting more and more intense. Therefore, the speed of his recovery was getting slower and slower. In fact, his body couldn't keep up with the speed of destruction. He had to balance the life energy and death energy in order to complete nirvana in the nirvana pool. It was no wonder that the people who couldn't complete nirvana in the nirvana pool were only a minority. Even for someone like him who had died once and had come back to life, it was still very difficult to complete the nirvana pool. Many people had died in the nirvana pool. It was unknown how many vengeful spirits were living in it. Therefore, the ancient phoenix realm had no choice but to use their hands to eradicate these vengeful spirits. Yi Shiwen didn't dare to go to the depths of the magma pool. He could even feel that there were tyrannical creatures with dreadful auras lurking in the depths of the magma pool. There were far more than just king stage experts who had been killed in there. Even profound realm experts had died tragically in there. However, Yi Shiwen didn't need to go deep into the magma pool. He had already encountered the experts of the Phoenix clan who had been eroded by the death energy and had turned into dead spirit. Fortunately, these dead spirits were merely dead spirits condensed from resentment. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would have had no choice but to turn around and run away if he had encountered so many dead spirits one after another. Bang! 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 Terrifying collision sounds spread from the magma pool. Huge waves would form on the surface of the nirvana pool with the height of thousands of meters every time a fierce collision occurred. They would then hit the surface of the nirvana pool. Such waves would rise and fall in succession. Many bubbles would also start to stir up. It symbolized the intense battle that was taking place below. These people weren't ordinary. Every single one of them was an outstanding expert of the King division. Every single one of them had their own secret art. Therefore, it was possible for them to tangle with those dead spirits in the nirvana pond. In fact, even the ancient Phoenix realm couldn't bring out so many top-notch experts of the King division in one go. Many people had killed the dead spirits in the midst of this fierce battle. However, some people had also been killed by the dead spirit. They had been burnt to ashes by the magma pool. Their ashes had reached the surface of the magma pool. However, they had soon evaporated, and hadn't left anything behind. These people weren't members of the Phoenix clan. Therefore, they didn't even have the opportunity to turn into dead spirit. The female official stood in the void. Her face was expressionless. She had an ice-cold look on her face. She didn't have the slightest change in her expression as she saw those huge and petite ashes floating up. In the end, everyone couldn't resist the temptation of stepping into the mysterious realm. So, they rushed down one after another. However, how could it be so easy to step into the mysterious realm? Many people had lost their lives, but still couldn't step into the mysterious realm. The female official seemed to have some kind of magic weapon on her body. She could clearly see everything that was happening under the Nirvana pool. She couldn't help but sneer when she saw some people overestimating their own capabilities and trying to enter the depths of the Nirvana pool. These people didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. They wouldn't have considered opening the Nirvana pool if they hadn't taken into account the possibility that the experts of the Phoenix clan would turn into resentful spirits once they died in the Nirvana pool. However, even if the Nirvana pool was opened, it was up to them whether they had the ability to complete the Nirvana process or not. However, her eyes quickly locked onto Yi Shiwen's body. She found that Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast. He had blown up a phoenix of the dead in just 2 or 3 moves. It was very difficult for an ordinary person to kill a phoenix of the dead even if they could defeat it. That was because the power of death was everywhere in this place. So, the phoenix of the dead could recover at the fastest speed. Therefore, many people had been killed by the phoenix of the dead because of this. However, Yi Shiwen didn't seem to care about all of this. He had blown up the phoenix of the dead in 2 or 3 moves. Then, he had absorbed the power of death into his body. This had left the phoenix of the dead unable to fight back. Interesting. Yi Shiwen. Chapter 1772. Bang! Yi Shiwen grabbed the body of a phoenix of death and exploded it. Then, he refined the dead spirit energy in an instant. The dead spirit chi was refined by the yin-yang life and death diagram in his body. At this time, a full day had passed. The dead spirit chi had penetrated into his flesh and blood from the surface of his skin. The speed was getting faster and faster. His face was covered with a black dead spirit chi. In this day, he had killed more than 30 undead phoenixes. It could be said that his speed was very fast. As the dead spirit chi was refined more and more, the power of life and death in the yin-yang life and death diagram gradually balanced out. However, the power of death in the magma had begun to penetrate into his flesh and blood. If this continued, sooner or later, it would penetrate into his bone marrow. At that time, the situation would only become more and more serious. In just one day, the heroes from various worlds who had originally entered had been eliminated. Some couldn't bear it and escaped. Some directly turned into a lump of charcoal and floated to the surface of the magma. In just one day, more than half of the people were eliminated. Most of the people in the ancient barrens had also been eliminated. They couldn't persist at all even though they had tried their best. Yi Shiwen didn't care about the changes outside. In his eyes, there was only the endless power of death in the magma. He wanted to absorb, 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 and absorb again until the power of life and the power of death in the yin-yang life and death diagram could balance each other. He didn't have much time. As time passed, the erosion of the power of death in his body was getting more and more serious. He couldn't last forever. In his body, the yin-yang life and death diagram was taking shape bit by bit. It was originally just an incomplete diagram, but with the supplement of the power of death, it had faintly formed a small complete diagram. Although its power couldn't be compared to the complete yin-yang life and death diagram, the truth of the power of life and death contained in it wasn't inferior at all. Time passed minute by minute, second by second, day by day. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Tens of thousands of meters above the Nirvana pond, hundreds of figures were sitting in the void in 2s and 3s. Some were talking, and some were sitting in the void, constantly expelling the invading power of death in their bodies. If they couldn't expel the power of death in time, it was likely to become a huge hidden danger in the future. Thinking of this, they had to be careful. Some people didn't gain anything from this trip. They didn't make any progress at all. However, there were also people who were happy. Clearly, they had gained a lot, and it was very likely that they would be able to break through in the future. However, everyone rejoiced in their hearts. No matter what, they were much luckier than those who died in the magma. These were all top-notch experts of the king tier in their respective world. In their respective worlds, they were already people of high status and authority. It would definitely be a pity for them to die here. However, they did not leave. They were waiting quietly because there were still a few people who had yet to come out from the magma of the Nirvana pool. 4 people. The names of these 4 people were also firmly engraved in their hearts. Qinlai, Aoshiba, Haiwuya, Yi Shiwen. In an instant, the names of these 4 people were firmly engraved in the hearts of the elites of the various worlds. They were deeply aware of how dangerous the Nirvana pool was. As experts of the king tier, there were few who could match up to them in the world. Even so, this Nirvana pool could be said to be a heavy loss. In just these 3 days, there were actually hundreds of experts who had fallen in it. These weren't carrots on the side of the road. There would be another wave of experts of the king tier. Even if there were 10 experts of the celestial realm, there might not be one of them. Moreover, these people were the elites of the king tier. The terror of the Nirvana pool was indeed worthy of being a legendary existence. Most people couldn't hold on the first day. On the second day, there were only a few who could hold on until the third day. Only a few people could hold on until the third day. Only those who had escaped from the Xian world battlefield in one piece could hold on until the third day. Now it was already the 4th day and they were still inside. There were no signs of them coming out. They were secretly shocked. They didn't know how strong this cultivation was. They had all entered the Nirvana pool, so they were naturally very clear that the corrosion of the power of death in the Nirvana pool was unavoidable. No matter what method they used, they could only use their profound cultivation to resist. In other words, the more profound one's cultivation was, the longer one could resist. And the cultivation of these 4 people was clearly far above everyone else. Forget about Aoshiba and Qinlai. As experts of the Xian realm, their cultivation was naturally more than 10 times stronger than everyone else. But Haiwuya and Yi Shiwen could actually hold on until now. How did they do it? Very quickly, the information of these 2 people spread out from the mouths of the people of the ancient desolation and began to be imprinted in the hearts of many experts. The son of the sea god, Haiwuya, the disciple of a king-tier expert, Yi Shiwen. And it just so happened that these 2 people came from the ancient Baron's continent. This place used to be the ancient demon realm. Many people were secretly shocked. If it was only one person, it wouldn't be a big deal. But among the king-tier experts, only 2 people could hold on until now, and both of them came from the ancient desolation. It was clear that the ancient desolation was far from as simple as everyone thought. As the ancient demon realm used to shake the world in ancient times, there were probably many existences that people didn't understand. From the mouths of the people of the ancient desolation, everyone learned that Haiwuya was a genuine son of the sea god. This was incredible. In the universe, gods were the noblest existences. Just like the lightning beast, it only had the bloodline of an ancient desolation beast. In terms of nobility, how could it compare to the son of the sea god? And Yi Shiwen was even more extraordinary. He was actually the disciple of an existing king-tier expert. A king-tier expert was an existence that could kill gods, and was almost equivalent to a god. Intentionally or unintentionally, the people of the ancient desolation didn't want others to look down on the ancient desolation. Although the ancient desolation hadn't interacted with the outside world for a long time, the internal strife between the major races took up too much of their energy. In addition, the demon race was close at hand, which took up too much of their energy, causing them to gradually disappear from the various worlds. Therefore, they brought out the name of a king-tier expert to shock everyone. Even if it was a human king-tier expert, at this time, it seemed that they couldn't get away from it. As expected, when everyone heard that there was a king-tier expert in the ancient desolation, they were immediately filled with respect. Fear grew in their hearts, and they didn't dare to treat the ancient desolation as a desolate land anymore. The world that used to dominate the universe in ancient times was indeed extraordinary. Moreover, regardless of whether it was the human race, sea race, or demon race, they were all races that had a wide range of branches in various worlds. Even in other worlds there were experts from these races. One after another, they came forward and tried to worm their way into the ancient desolation, as if they wanted to know more about this terrifying king-tier expert. As for the people of the ancient desolation, they weren't stingy either. They exaggerated how terrifying King Taitsong was. When everyone found out that he was in existence that was only half a step away from becoming an emperor, the ambition in their hearts was immediately extinguished. An existence that was half a step away from becoming an emperor was definitely not someone they could provoke. Even if they used up all the power of the world, they would still be beaten to a pulp. A king-tier expert could ensure the prosperity of a race. If there wasn't a king-tier expert, then the race wouldn't have the qualifications to rule over a region. Once an emperor-level powerhouse appeared, it would be far more than just ruling over a region. It would be more accurate to say that they would be able to rule over a world. Unless there was another emperor-level powerhouse at the same time, they would be invincible. For example, the major races that dominated the universe now, such as the human race, demon race, etc., all of them had more than one emperor-tier expert. In ancient times, there were even many battles between demon emperors, demon kings, and human emperors. Blood splattered across the sky. In such battles, even emperor-tier experts would fall. However, that was all in ancient times. Nowadays, it was rare to even see a king-tier expert, not to mention a legendary emperor-tier expert. Even an existence that was only half a step away from becoming an emperor-tier expert would be invincible in the current world, and no one would be able to stop them. Even they would tremble in fear when facing such an existence. There's actually such a senior in our human race. We should go on a pilgrimage and worship him. Yeah, it's rare to hear of a senior at the king-tier expert in our human race. Let's go. Let's go together. Compared to the mixed feelings of the people from the other races, the thoughts of the people from the human race were much simpler. They had only heard that there was actually a king-ranked powerhouse among their own race. Even with their pride, they would still worship such an existence. No one felt that there was anything wrong with that. A king-tier expert was no different from a god. Unless it was someone at the same level, no one would dare to disrespect them. Everyone from the ancient desolation had mixed feelings in their hearts as well. Initially, they had been clamoring for the destruction of the human race. But now, they had to rely on Emperor Taitsong of the human race to regain their dignity. Life was truly unpredictable. No one knew what would happen in the next second. Everyone was shocked. Boom. Just as everyone was immersed in their own thoughts, a loud explosion erupted from within the Nirvana pool. An azure figure immediately leapt out from within. Everyone looked at him. Who else could it be but Haiwuya? Haiwuya came out of the Nirvana pool and glanced at everyone. When he saw that Yi Shiwen was not among them, his face fell. Chapter 1773. If Yi Shiwen was not there, then there were only two possibilities. One was that Yi Shiwen had died in the Nirvana pool, and the other was that he was still in there and had not come out. He regarded Yi Shiwen as a formidable enemy. In fact, it could even be said that Yi Shiwen was a formidable opponent. Especially after the news that Yi Shiwen had killed 7 king-ranked experts by himself had spread throughout the entire barren land. Many busybodies even called him the strongest King Division expert. This title was recognized by many people even among the Sea Clan, Demon Clan, and 100 Clan alliance. It had even become a synonym for Yi Shiwen. How could someone as proud as Hai Wuya accept this? Although he believed that his strength was not inferior to Yi Shiwen's, and even more tyrannical than Yi Shiwen's, he did not have any notable achievements, and being an assistant was not convincing. Compared to Yi Shiwen's brilliant record of wiping out 3 major clans in one night, including 2 royal clans, and then consecutively killing 7 king-rank experts, Hai Wuya, who had just made his debut in the Myriad Clans convention, naturally couldn't be compared with Yi Shiwen. In the eyes of the crowd, they were not on the same level at all. He was just a very strong king-rank expert, while Yi Shiwen was the strongest king-rank expert. The disparity between the two sides was already clear at a glance. He had always wanted to fight with Yi Shiwen to prove that his strength was far superior to Yi Shiwen's, but he could not find this opportunity. Even if he believed that his strength was far superior to Yi Shiwen's, he had never underestimated Yi Shiwen. Naturally, he wouldn't think that he would be able to survive, while Yi Shiwen would be buried in the Nirvana pond. If that was the case, it would prove that he had overestimated his opponent. He believed that his judgment wouldn't be wrong. Yi Shiwen was a formidable and difficult opponent. He wouldn't die so easily. So, there was only one possibility, and that was that he was still in the Nirvana pool and hadn't come out yet. Thinking of this, his mood suddenly became bad. He was very clear about how terrifying the Nirvana pool was. These 3 days and 3 nights could be said to be the most dangerous time he had ever experienced in his life. Ever since he had started his cultivation journey, everything had been smooth sailing. Everything had been laid out for him. Coupled with his unparalleled talent, he had easily completed the cultivation that an ordinary person would not be able to complete in 100 years. What he had experienced in the Nirvana pool was the best he had ever experienced in his life. Even if he had the precious treasure of Sea God, he couldn't completely eliminate the power of death. He could only rely on his profound martial power to forcibly resist it. Even he couldn't resist it at this time. So, what was Yi Shiwen relying on? What did Yi Shiwen rely on? What did he rely on to be above him? Thinking of this, his mood suddenly became terrible. Sure enough, he soon learned from others that apart from Aoshiba and Qin Lai, Yi Shiwen was the only one still inside. After knowing this, his complexion became even more unsightly. He regarded Yi Shiwen as a formidable enemy. He must get rid of Yi Shiwen in the future. And Aoshiba had humiliated him too much. He even wanted to use him as a chariot puller. This was simply too much. If it was Aoshiba and Qin Lai, it would be fine. Although Aoshiba had gone too far, he was already a profound realm expert after all. It was normal for him to last longer than him. But what about Yi Shiwen? His eyes stared at the Nirvana pool while constantly operating the azure bead to expel the power of death from his body. He had been staring at the surface of the Nirvana pool, hoping that Yi Shiwen would directly break out in the next second. But obviously, the Nirvana pool did not do as he wished. Although there were continuous 1,000-meter waves, there was no sign of anyone jumping out. Under such circumstances, time passed day by day. Another 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, a loud roar was heard and a figure appeared. Everyone's spirits were lifted as they hurriedly looked at the figure. Aoshiba, it's actually Aoshiba. How is this possible? I thought the next one to come out would be Yi Shiwen. How can it be Aoshiba? This is impossible. How can Aoshiba, as a top expert among the profound realm experts, be inferior to Yi Shiwen, who is a king-rank expert? This is impossible, this is impossible. Could it be that Yi Shiwen has already died in there, but we just don't know about it? Impossible. If he is already dead, the female official will definitely say something. But she has never said anything. Obviously, Yi Shiwen is still in there, and he is still alive. Oh my God, what kind of monster is he? He can actually hold out longer than a profound realm expert. Aoshiba walked in the void with great vigor and vigor. Obviously, he had obtained great benefits because of this. His temperament had greatly improved before he went in, and he was not far from breaking through to the next realm. At this time, he was naturally very proud of himself, but at this time, he glanced at the crowd and was suddenly stunned, just like Hai Wuya before, because he did not find Qin Lai, which meant that Qin Lai had held out longer than him. His face suddenly became a little ugly, and he snorted coldly. But when his eyes swept over Hai Wuya, he was keenly aware of the hatred in Hai Wuya's heart. Suddenly, a dragon claw directly appeared in the void, and directly slapped Hai Wuya on the spot. "Who do you think you are? How dare you be dissatisfied with me?" Bang! Hai Wuya was directly slapped, and he was sent flying on the spot. His handsome face was directly slapped, and half of his teeth were directly broken. Everyone was stunned. No one thought that Aoshiba would dare to fight in this place. No one thought that he would fight in this place, and they seemed to be dumbfounded as they looked at Aoshiba in a daze. What is arrogance? This is arrogance. The female official immediately reacted, and a powerful aura was released, suppressing Aoshiba. However, Aoshiba did not have the intention to continue to fight. He just snorted coldly, and then looked at the female official indifferently. 18th Prince, you're putting us in a difficult position. You're our honored guest. However, Hai Wuya is also our honored guest. We won't allow you to do anything that would damage the reputation of our ancient Phoenix realm, the female official said with an ice-cold expression. Her eyes were flickering with cold light. She did not really care about Aoshiba, and she did not even care about him. So what? Who does he think he is? Is he even worthy of being compared with me? He actually dared to harbor hatred towards me. This in itself is an unpardonable crime. If something happens to me, can your ancient Phoenix realm take responsibility? It is precisely because of your face that I did not directly kill him. Otherwise, if I wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping my palm. Aoshiba said in an arrogant and unruly manner. He was backed by the formidable Dragon Island. That was a dreadful force that was famous throughout the heavens. Even the ancient Phoenix realm was not willing to offend the Dragon Island. I don't wish for such a thing to happen again. Otherwise, don't blame us for expelling you, the female official said in a cold voice. Her warning was very strong. Our ancient Phoenix realm is not willing to offend the Dragon Island. However, it is not a place where anyone can act presumptuously. You've gone too far. You've gone too far. Hai Wuya, who had been sent flying, gritted his teeth as he steadied himself in the air. If it was said that he had been humiliated before, then this was a blatant slap to the face, a stomp to the face. He was the dignified sea god's son. He was an invincible existence in the ancient times. Even those old antiques and great ominous beings wouldn't make things difficult for him for the sake of the force behind him. Even Yi Shiwen, whom he regarded as his archenemy, wouldn't dare to humiliate him like this. However, Aoshiba had done so. It was as if he was teaching a disobedient dog a lesson. He would slap Aoshiba whenever he was unhappy. Aoshiba's status was noble. He was the son of the Dragon Island's Dragon King. He was a top-notch genius of the younger generation. However, was he inferior to him? The sea god's son was incomparably noble. He wasn't inferior to him in any way. However, he had been humiliated like this. However, he forcefully swallowed the blood that was about to spurt out. He knew that this wasn't the time to settle accounts. This wasn't the ancient times. He didn't have a powerful force to rely on. If he had been in the ancient times, he would have asked his backer to come out and kill Aoshiba even if he had to face the wrath of the Dragon Island. His pride couldn't be humiliated so easily. However, he also knew that it was impossible for him to take revenge now. Within the same realm, as long as the opponent was a king, He was confident that he could defeat Yi Shiwen, who was known as the strongest king. He was the strongest, however, in the face of a profound life realm expert who was completely above him. He knew the gap between them no matter how arrogant he was. Moreover, Aoshiba was probably a top-notch expert in the profound life realm. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only swallow his anger. Wait until I break through to the profound life realm. I will definitely return the humiliation I suffered today. I will cut you into pieces. He gritted his teeth as he thought. Aoshiba seemed to have sensed the resentment in his heart. However, he merely glanced at it and didn't care at all. He just kept sneering and didn't care about Aoshiba's threat. Boom! While everyone was still in shock, they saw a huge commotion in the Nirvana pool. Another golden figure stepped on the wave. Everyone looked and saw that it was Qinlai. It's not Yi Shiwen again. How is this possible? Yi Shiwen is actually so strong. Impossible. He must have some secret technique. Chapter 1774. Many people were shocked because they found that the third one to come out was not the last one. In other words, Yi Shiwen was the last one to come out. Even Aoshiba and Qinlai, the two profound realm experts, couldn't do it. How could a mere Yi Shiwen do it? This made many people unable to understand. However, they naturally didn't think that Yi Shiwen would be more tyrannical than the two profound realm experts. That was simply impossible. However, they also understood that everyone had a trump card that others didn't know about. Therefore, it wasn't impossible for Yi Shiwen to survive in this kind of environment far longer than the profound realm expert. However, this didn't mean that Yi Shiwen was more tyrannical than the profound realm expert. However, even so, it was enough to leave a very deep impression in everyone's hearts. What's wrong? Everyone has this kind of expression. Don't you welcome me? Qinlai laughed and looked at everyone. Everyone looked at each other and didn't know what to say. However, Qinlai soon understood why everyone was so surprised. The reason was very simple. It was because of that human of the same race, Yi Shiwen. If it could be said that before this, Yi Shiwen could only be regarded as inconspicuous, then after he had surpassed the masters of profound realm, and stood tall until the last moment, all of a sudden, everyone remembered his name. Yi Shiwen's name was destined to resound throughout the heavens. Yi Shiwen? It's quite interesting. Qinlai laughed heartily. Like everyone else, Qinlai also began to fix his eyes on the surface of the Nirvana pond. He wanted to see Yi Shiwen emerge from the water. They didn't have the ability of the female official to see through the surface of the Nirvana pond. However, they wouldn't give up so easily. Many people hadn't even seen Yi Shiwen before. Or it could be said that they didn't care about Yi Shiwen at all. Everyone's eyes were on the Thunder Behemoth, Hai Wuya and the others. Moreover, there were two profound realm experts. Among these people, Yi Shiwen was really too inconspicuous. Except for the people in ancient times who knew of his ability, people in other worlds simply didn't know anything about him. They didn't want to miss such a good opportunity. They had a hunch that they had to remember this name. However, time passed day by day while everyone was waiting. Many people had been waiting day by day, but they hadn't been able to see Yi Shiwen whom they were looking forward to seeing. At this time, many people finally believed that Yi Shiwen indeed had some means to resist the power of death. Otherwise, even a profound realm expert wouldn't be able to hold on for a long time just by relying on his martial power. Many experts of the ancient Phoenix world outside the Nirvana pond had been startled by Yi Shiwen after 3 days. A messenger came in from the outside and came to the front of the female official. He respectfully said, "Your Excellency, the prince's wedding ceremony has begun. My king has decreed that you should bring these distinguished guests over." "Bring them over." That female officer just glanced at that person, and then said expressionlessly, "What about this person?" The news of someone being able to stay in the Nirvana pond for such a long time had already spread to the higher-ups of the ancient Phoenix world. Many people had begun to know about Yi Shiwen's existence. He had also become the focus of many people's attention. Let this person continue to stay here. Anyway, he is still killing the undead Phoenix. Generally speaking, he isn't violating the rules. Let's see how far he can go. That female official indifferently said. Your Excellency is right. The messenger didn't say much after seeing the female official say so. He led the others and walked out of the Nirvana pond. Everyone was reluctant to see Yi Shiwen come out with their own eyes. However, the main purpose of their trip was the wedding ceremony. They weren't just the heaven's pride of the younger generation. They were also the representatives of the major forces. They had come here bearing the mission of their respective clans or forces. So, they couldn't miss such a wedding just because of their personal preferences. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves when they returned. Soon, even Aoshiba and Qinlai also left. Only that female official was left in the Nirvana pond. She just looked at the Nirvana pond expressionlessly. It seemed as if she was paying attention to when Yi Shiwen would come out. However, she soon frowned. She clearly saw Yi Shiwen's current condition. It was clearly frighteningly bleak. Yi Shiwen's entire body had been completely eroded by the power of death. Not a trace of vitality could be seen from his entire body. Only death energy could be seen surrounding his entire body. This kind of power of death was not so much a kind of energy. It was better to say that it was a kind of rule. It was simply unavoidable. Even the experts of the mysterious realm wouldn't be able to survive here. This was already imaginable. In any case, Yi Shiwen was merely in the realm of the king grade. There was still some distance between him and the mysterious realm. At this time, his entire body had become skinny. His skin had turned completely black. It seemed as if he would die at any time. Not good. He has been deeply eroded by the power of death. Even if he comes out now, it will be too late. That female official secretly said. Yi Shiwen was afraid that no matter what kind of means he had, he would be killed in this situation. However, just when the female official was about to take action, suddenly, in the void, a powerful tribulation cloud began to condense. The pitch-black clouds began to appear above the boundary of the Nirvana pond in an instant. This is the tribulation cloud of crossing the tribulation? That female official immediately reacted. If this wasn't the tribulation cloud of crossing the tribulation, what was it? It was just that the person in the Nirvana pond now, apart from herself, was Yi Shiwen, who seemed to be dying at any time. He was very clear about his own situation. This meant that the person who was crossing the tribulation was only Yi Shiwen. She immediately understood. Although this kind of situation was rare in the past, it wasn't non-existent. The Nirvana pond could promote people's understanding of the power of death. Even if ordinary people gained something, they would have to leave the Nirvana pond to meditate in order to make a breakthrough. However, there were also some people who, under various special circumstances, would directly advance to a higher realm in the Nirvana pond. Yi Shiwen's situation was undoubtedly the latter. The female official's reaction was very fast. She immediately pinched a hand sign and opened the boundary of the sky. Then, an inexplicable smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Yi Shiwen, the heavenly tribulation is coming at you fiercely. I don't know if you can withstand it. However, don't think of using the boundary of the Nirvana pond to help you block the heavenly tribulation. If it was a disciple of the ancient Phoenix realm's Phoenix clan, she would not hesitate to initiate the heavenly tribulation and reduce most of the power of the heavenly tribulation for him so that he could pass the heavenly tribulation more easily. However, it was different when it was Yi Shiwen. She didn't need to help Yi Shiwen at all. Soon, the heavenly tribulation directly struck down. Crash! 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 Countless electric dragons descended from the sky and directly struck into the Nirvana pond. They immediately sensed the existence of those undead phoenixes. These extremely fierce and destructive energies were wreaking havoc in the Nirvana pond. These undead phoenixes were originally the most difficult existence to deal with for ordinary people. However, they were nothing in front of these electric dragons. The strength of these undead phoenixes was very high. Ordinary experts of the king rank wouldn't be able to deal with them. However, they were still electrocuted when facing these electric dragons. They roared unceasingly. They simply couldn't dodge and were struck to death by these electric dragons. These undead phoenixes didn't even have a chance to dodge. This was because these electric dragons were simply overwhelming. They were like stormy waves, and everything was completely annihilated in an instant. The female official was dumbfounded as she looked at the scene in front of her. She couldn't believe that there was such a method. They had never thought that one could actually use the power of heavenly tribulation to destroy those undead phoenixes. For ordinary people, these undead phoenixes were very troublesome. They were completely unable to deal with the power of death. However, it was not a problem for the heavenly tribulation of the extreme and pure yang. On the contrary, the power of heavenly tribulation was one of the nemeses of the power of death. Its violent power could destroy all the power of death. In other words, they had never thought that someone's heavenly tribulation could be so violent. For anyone, crossing a heavenly tribulation was a very frightening matter. It could be said that 10 out of 10 people would die. Especially the great tribulation of the mysterious realm. It was a very big tribulation. Even among those distinguished guests and outstanding experts of various worlds, only less than half of them could enter the mysterious realm and cross the great tribulation of the mysterious realm. Ordinary people would have no chance of survival. Under such circumstances, many people had to be serious when crossing a heavenly tribulation. They would even be afraid of finding a safe place for closed-door training. Not to mention choosing the place of crossing the heavenly tribulation in the Nirvana pond. This had added countless variables to the situation. Even a wise person wouldn't do such a thing. For generations, the members of the Phoenix clan had attracted the heavenly tribulation in the Nirvana pond. Even if the heavenly tribulation had been weakened by the enchantment, only less than 1 out of 10 people could cross the heavenly tribulation. Their success rate would have been greatly increased if they were in the outside world. Many people would have lost their lives for no reason. Moreover, she had never seen anyone's heavenly tribulation be so fierce. Even the disciples of some extremely noble branches of the Phoenix clan had never heard of anyone who could attract such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. The beginning of the heavenly tribulation was more dreadful than many people's ultimate great tribulation. Yi Shiwen, can you withstand such a heavenly tribulation? The female official opened her red lips and asked. Chapter 1775. Yi Shiwen was sitting in the Nirvana pool. His entire body was surrounded by the deathly aura. At this time, the deathly aura had penetrated deep into his bone marrow. It could even be said that he was beyond saving. This was also the reason why the female official was so surprised when she saw Yi Shiwen's condition. The longer he practiced in the Nirvana pool, the deeper the death energy would invade his body. Even with the strength of a king-level expert, staying in the Nirvana pool for such a long time was almost a dead end for him. The deathly aura had penetrated deep into his bone marrow and could not be removed. The only way was to abandon his body and use his spirit to become a ghost cultivator. Even if he could step into the profound life realm, the price was too high. The loss outweighed the gain. Moreover, if he took another step forward, the deathly aura would penetrate deep into his spirit. At that time, there would be no hope. It would be too late to abandon his body. The female official was already very surprised that he could persist until now. An ordinary king-rank expert would not be able to persist for a day before the deathly aura would penetrate deep into his bone marrow. On the second day, It might even penetrate into his spirit. An outsider who could persevere to this extent was unheard of. Walla. Countless thunderbolts directly struck the surface of the Nirvana pool and blasted a big hole. The terrifying power formed a huge storm tide and pushed the magma within a radius of a kilometer out of the Nirvana pool, with Yi Shiwen as the center, and formed a huge hollow. The terrifying thunderbolts were wreaking havoc. Even the phoenixes of the dead in the Nirvana pool did not dare to approach. On the contrary, they fled as far as possible. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had killed more than 300 undead phoenixes during this period of time. So, his body had already filled the sky with a fierce aura. The ordinary undead phoenixes would look at him as if they had seen their nemesis. So, how would they dare to approach him? Those thunderbolts struck Yi Shiwen's body. At this time, he was already like a skeleton. His entire body's flesh and blood had been completely devoured by the deathly aura. It was like a corpse that had been dead for a long time. When these thunderbolts struck his body, they first caused a strong rebound from his deathly aura. This deathly aura immediately condensed into ferocious creatures of the dead. They looked up to the sky and roared. They actually dared to fight back against the heavenly tribulation. One by one, the ferocious creatures of the dead pounced on those thunderbolts. Some tore the heavenly tribulation apart, while others were directly struck by the heavenly tribulation. Both sides were like two armies, engaging in a cruel contest in the void assembly. So that's how it is. At this time, the female official who was 10,000 meters away opened her red lips and said, her eyes lit up. Even she couldn't help but admire Yi Shiwen. This idea was really amazing. Or, it could be said that he was extremely bold. He actually wanted to use the power of heavenly tribulation to eradicate the deathly energy in his body. The deathly energy in his body had already penetrated deep into his bone marrow. It could be said that he was completely hopeless. There was no other way but to abandon his body. Most people would rather not move around in the Nirvana pool than let the deathly energy penetrate deep into their bone marrow. The price of doing so was too high. Not only did he dare to do it, he had probably already thought of a way. This kind of courage was not something that an ordinary person would dare to do. Most importantly, even if an ordinary person had the guts, they wouldn't have the strength to do so. However, he had both the strength and the guts to create such a miracle. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, the deathly energy on Yi Shiwen's body and the heavenly tribulation were still colliding fiercely. The deathly energy that penetrated deep into Yi Shiwen's body was not that vulnerable. This kind of deathly energy was directly transformed from the high-level energy of the death law. Although it was restrained by the power of heavenly tribulation, it was not that vulnerable. If this was an ordinary person's heavenly tribulation, it would not be able to shake this deathly energy. However, Yi Shiwen's heavenly tribulation was also exceptionally fierce. This could be seen from the solemn expression of the female official who was far away. When she was crossing her heavenly tribulation, it was far from being as fierce as Yi Shiwen's. The power of heavenly tribulation was still constantly strengthening. Those waves just now were only at the initial stage. Even so, it had already fought evenly with the deathly energy on Yi Shiwen's body. Almost no one could do anything to the other. However, as the heavenly tribulation progressed further and became a mutated heavenly tribulation, the power of death began to be unable to withstand it. It could no longer occupy half of the heavenly tribulation. Instead, it began to gradually lose its hold and began to collapse bit by bit. Bit by bit, it was smashed into powder. Using heavenly tribulation to eliminate the deathly energy is indeed a good idea. But after that, how do you plan to deal with such a violent heavenly tribulation? The female official said to herself. She didn't know what Yi Shiwen would do. The power of death was being eliminated bit by bit. After an unknown amount of time, the power of death was finally completely eliminated in the boundless sea of lightning. At the moment when the deathly energy was eliminated, Yi Shiwen's body, which had been completely withered due to the deathly energy, bounced back almost in an instant. His body, which was originally only skin and bones, began to fill up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Countless flesh and blood were reborn. In a moment, Yi Shiwen had recovered to his peak state at an amazing speed. What kind of healing technique is this? It's so amazing! At this time, the female official was thoroughly shocked. The Phoenix race was famous for their healing ability, but she had never seen such an astonishing recovery speed. It was simply frightening. She had been eroded by the power of death to such an extent. Even if the power of death was eradicated, it would still be impossible for her to recover so quickly. This was the same principle as when a person was sick. Sickness came like a mountain and went away like silk. Even if the person was cured, it was impossible for the body to recuperate so quickly. And an even more amazing scene appeared. Facing the countless descending thunderbolts, Yi Shiwen didn't dodge at all. Instead, he took them head-on with his body. Rumble! 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 Countless variant heavenly tribulations bombarded on top of his head. In an instant, a huge roar was formed, forming a huge lightning energy storm. However, this amazing scene didn't exist for long. A big hand stretched out from the lightning storm and grabbed it. These lightning storms were all caught by him. In an instant, Yi Shiwen's figure was revealed. The lightning energy was constantly boiling in his hand, but it couldn't break free from his palm. His palm was like the universe. It could accommodate everything. Nothing could escape from his hand. It was very terrifying. Bang! These variant heavenly tribulations were directly grabbed by his palm and exploded on the spot. They turned into a torrent of energy and poured into his body. It made his body even more perfect, and the rest of the energy was constantly turning into shockwaves that attacked the barrier of the next realm. How terrifying was Yi Shiwen's heavenly tribulations, especially those variant heavenly tribulations. Even if only a part of it was absorbed by him, the impact was so great that he could already feel the cracks in the mysterious realm. Mysterious realm was a mysterious realm. This kind of feeling could only be understood and not explained. It could be said that everyone's situation of entering the mysterious realm was different. It couldn't be taught by words or deeds. Even if one had already entered the mysterious realm, he could understand it. However, he couldn't translate this mysterious realm into words that everyone could understand. So, over time, the mysterious realm became a very difficult realm to cross because there was no experience to speak of. However, the mysterious life realm was about the understanding of the power of life. Yi Shiwen, who had the yin-yang life and death diagram and stayed in the nirvana pond for so long, had a profound understanding of this. He had already reached perfection, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to attract the heavenly tribulations. Now, he was only one step away from accumulating a huge amount of energy. The comprehension of the mysterious realm experts was 10 times that of the experts of the king level. Their strength was more than 10 times invincible. Ordinary people needed a very long time to accumulate enough energy. However, Yi Shiwen didn't want to wait for such a long time. The purest energy in the world was the heavenly tribulations. It didn't contain a trace of impurities and could be directly absorbed. However, in fact, only Yi Shiwen dared to do this. If anyone else dared to do this, they would have already been blasted to death. There was absolutely no luck. He wanted to reach the pinnacle in one step. This would save ordinary people hundreds of years of hard work. Only people with profound skills like Yi Shiwen would dare to do this. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen didn't stop. He directly ascended to the sky in one step and rushed towards the direction of the heavenly tribulations. At this time, the female official's state of mind had already reached a very high level. However, at this time she was dumbfounded. She had seen too many people crossing the heavenly tribulations. However, she had never seen a person crossing the heavenly tribulations in such a ferocious manner. Not only was he not afraid of the heavenly tribulations, but he also wanted to rush towards the heavenly tribulations. He was simply a madman. Moreover, he was a powerful madman. How could such a person be born in the human race? Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen started a massacre in the heavenly tribulations clouds. Those newly formed strange beasts were simply no match for him. They were directly blown up by him on the spot. Some of them were pinched and exploded on the spot. Some of them simply didn't have enough time to react and exploded on the spot. Countless lightning torrents were absorbed by Yi Shiwen and replenished his body. Little by little, Yi Shiwen's aura was constantly rising. It seemed as if it had reached the limit. The terrifying torrents were like a flood breaking through a dam, directly destroying everything. And Yi Shiwen's strength finally climbed to the extreme. He broke through the barrier of the mysterious realm in one fell swoop. Mysterious realm. He had finally stepped into the mysterious realm. Although he was merely at the initial stage of the mysterious life realm, but he could feel that the whole world seemed to have changed. Chapter 1776. Compared to the King Division, the Profound Realm was a whole new realm. After stepping into the Profound Realm, his comprehension of the world had reached a whole new level. Only those who had truly stepped into the Profound Life Realm could be considered to have stepped into the level of the ancient monsters. The king ranks were only the most tyrannical experts of the ancient times. Yi Shiwen was very clear on this point. Previously, during the battle to eradicate the Nine Infants clan, he had encountered an old ancestor of the initial stage of the Profound Life Realm. At that time, Yi Shiwen had been forced to retreat in defeat. If not for King Tai Tsong holding the line, perhaps the entire army would have been wiped out on the spot. The difference in strength between a King Division expert and a Profound Life Realm expert was just too great. The most terrifying characteristic of Profound Life Realm experts was that they could not be killed. Profound Life Realm experts had already comprehended the power of life. It could be said that they had an endless supply of life energy, and could even absorb life energy from the void to replenish themselves. This was the foundation of eternal life. It could be said that only by truly stepping into the Profound Life Realm could one be considered to have truly stepped onto the path of eternal life. Every living creature had a limit to their lifespan. The human race's lifespan was 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, no matter what method was used to maintain one's lifespan, one would die quickly. This was something unavoidable. Even the Heaven Realm experts, who were said to have merged with the world, were no exception. However, Profound Life Realm experts had the ability to absorb life energy. Although they could not break through the limit of 10,000 years, they had begun to have the foundation of eternal life. Therefore, the Profound Realm was the starting point of the path of eternal life. As for those below the Profound Realm, in the eyes of many, they did not even have the qualifications to touch the path of eternal life. As for the Profound Life Stage experts, who possessed the ability to absorb life force, their injuries would be mostly healed within a breath's time. It would be extremely difficult to kill them. Even if they were surrounded by a group of King-tier experts, they would not be afraid at all. Even if there were 100 or 80 of them, they would not be a match for them. This was also why Ao Shiba did not take Hai Wuya seriously. No matter how powerful the King Division experts were, they could not be a match for him. And now Yi Shiwen had also stepped into this realm. Within his body, a tyrannical power was constantly increasing, growing crazily with every passing minute and second. The dreadful energy had formed a huge storm around him. It looked like a cocoon from afar. And Yi Shiwen was in the center of the cocoon. He looked like a metamorphosing butterfly that could soar into the sky at any time. Above his head was a picture scroll that had a clear distinction between yin and yang. The power of yin and yang, life and death surged within it, forming a new balance. It gave off a truly terrifying aura, and wherever it passed, it seemed like it could destroy everything. Yi Shiwen closed his eyes and waited for the final transformation. He really succeeded. A strange light flickered in the female official's eyes. Alas, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. For the first time, the female officer felt overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. She didn't know what kind of attitude she should take. I hope it won't disappoint me. For the current ancient Phoenix realm, it could be said that there were continuous happy events. First, it was their prince's wedding, and they had invited prominent figures from various realms. After that, it was the selection of a son-in-law for the heavenly Phoenix maiden. Many geniuses had competed together, and they had experienced many battles. Among them, there were also many geniuses from the ancient Phoenix realm who had displayed their skills. The competition between the formidable geniuses of various worlds had made the people of the ancient Phoenix world cry out in excitement. All of them were experts of the king tier or above. They could be said to be the most elite of the various worlds. One could well imagine how intense the battle between them would be. You're right. In the end, after a series of battles, a young heaven's pride in the ancient Phoenix realm, Feng Yuan, defeated many opponents from various realms, and finally won the championship. Thus, he won the heart of the beauty and became the son-in-law of the heavenly Phoenix maiden. Although the geniuses from various realms were somewhat unwilling, they had no choice but to admire Feng Yuan's dreadful strength. After this battle, Feng Yuan could be said to have shaken various realms overnight, and his name was known throughout the world. At this time, there were also some people who had already understood. At this time, they realized that the selection of the heavenly Phoenix maiden's son-in-law might have been problematic from the very beginning. If it had been a selection of a son-in-law, it would have been announced to the whole world a few years ago. They wouldn't have waited until the last moment to tell them that the heavenly Phoenix maiden was going to select a son-in-law. Although they believed that their strength wasn't bad, they definitely couldn't be considered a top-notch powerhouse. At the very least, those figures who could move unhindered in the profound realm battlefield hadn't appeared yet. Only Aoshiba and Qinlai had appeared, which didn't count for much. Moreover, at the very last moment, Aoshiba and Qinlai, who had always been fiercely competing and had been the most optimistic, had also withdrawn from the competition. What was the reason behind this? Ordinary people only thought that this was normal, but they didn't think that it was so simple. In the end, the ancient Phoenix Realms people had indeed seized the championship and won the beauty. However, even though they had seen through it, they didn't say it out loud. Everyone was very clear that they had also obtained a lot of benefits from this trip. Many of them had also obtained a lot of benefits. However, in the end, they had become Feng Yuan's stepping stones. They had helped him become famous overnight. This genius, who could only be considered as having a good reputation in the ancient Phoenix world, had become famous overnight in every world. However, this could also be considered a prize. The ancient Phoenix realm had uncharacteristically opened up the Nirvana pool. How could such benefits be so easily obtained? Apart from Feng Yuan, the one who had the most limelight was Haiwia. After the battle in the Nirvana pool, he had gained a lot. After that, he had slowly passed the Profound Realm's great tribulation, stepped into the Profound Realm, and became a top-notch expert. Although he was defeated by Feng Yuan in the end, the terrifying battle between two Profound Realm experts had still intoxicated everyone. Although Aoshiba and Qinlai had fought before, their opponents were merely king-ranked experts. They couldn't display their full strength. Later on, both of them had withdrawn from the competition, which made everyone feel very regretful. However, compared to the two of them, although Hai Weiao was merely a newly advanced Profound Realm expert, he was still a Profound Life Realm expert. He was the real deal. The battle between him and Feng Yuan had also become a classic. It was precisely because of this battle that everyone clearly saw Feng Yuan's terrifying strength. Although the ancient Phoenix realm had used some tricks, Feng Yuan indeed possessed such strength. Therefore, it was understandable that he would win the championship. He should have a place among the peerless heroes of each world. However, something surprising happened before they could leave. They had originally thought that Feng Yuan would only get engaged after winning the championship. However, they hadn't expected that the ancient Phoenix realm would announce the wedding of Feng Yuan and the heavenly Phoenix maiden Hua Menghan at lightning speed. 10 days later, this group of people had no choice but to stay. They had to participate in the first wedding. After that, they had to continue to participate in the second wedding. Each wedding was grander and more exciting than the previous one. One after another, the big shots of various worlds rushed over to the imperial city of the ancient Phoenix realm. This included many big shots of the ancient Phoenix realm. For a moment, the imperial city of the ancient Phoenix realm was bustling with noise and excitement. Many ancient creatures were like devil gods. All of them were brimming with killing intent and tyrannical strength in the imperial city. After 3 days, all the big shots had also rushed over. The Phoenix King had specially built a huge villa in the imperial city as the venue for the wedding. Many huge creatures had also shrunk their figures. They didn't dare to act presumptuously in the imperial city of the ancient Phoenix realm. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. However, they still exposed a smile on their faces to show some respect to the ancient Phoenix realm. Damn it! Why is this Yi Shiwen so unreliable? Didn't he say that he would definitely appear? But that Feng Yuan guy has won the championship. What should we do? Don't tell me that elder sister Hua will marry that Feng Yuan guy. That little girl was constantly pacing back and forth at the entrance of the villa. She was extremely anxious. This won't do. We can't let things go on like this. Elder sister Hua will marry him if things go on like this. I must think of a way to rescue elder sister Hua. She hated Yi Shiwen to the core at this time. She also hated Yi Shiwen to the core. She couldn't question the decision of the higher-up. Many people in the ancient Phoenix realm were very clear that this competition had already been decided internally. However, it was useless even if this was the case. The only method she could think of was to use the loopholes in the rules. Could the ancient Phoenix realm slap their own faces if Yi Shiwen won the championship? This was naturally impossible. Therefore, the only bargaining chip that could change everything was Yi Shiwen. It was a pity that this damned Yi Shiwen was extremely unreliable. They had agreed to let him come. However, he hadn't appeared even after Feng Yuan had won the championship. He was simply a rotten person. I have a rumor that the heavenly Phoenix girl wasn't willing to marry Feng Yuan. What do you mean? How could it be that she wasn't willing? Why would she choose a son-in-law if she wasn't willing? I've also heard about this in the past few days. It's said that Feng Yuan has always been pursuing this heavenly Phoenix girl. It's just that this heavenly Phoenix girl doesn't give him any face. Feng Yuan has won the championship this time. So, it naturally won't be the result that the heavenly Phoenix girl wants. Perhaps it will add to the waves. Now that you've mentioned it, it's true. Speaking of which, I seem to have heard a few people of the ancient Phoenix realm say that we must be careful and guard against that Yi Shiwen. Why must we be careful and guard against Yi Shiwen? Considering the strength of the ancient Phoenix realm, wouldn't Yi Shiwen bring about his own destruction if he were to cause trouble? I don't know. Listen quickly. The bell has rung. The wedding is about to begin. Dong. 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 The sound of a huge bell instantly spread throughout the entire ancient Phoenix realm. Chapter 1777. Clang! 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 The sound of a huge bell instantly spread throughout the entire ancient Phoenix world. The sound of the ancient bell fiercely shook the little girl's heart. She bit her lower lip and was about to return. Suddenly, A powerful and vast aura came from the distant horizon. The array in the entire villa was also revived in an instant. It seemed as if it had received some kind of intense stimulation. There were many experts in the villa. They reacted almost immediately, and looked at the void one after another. They were also very powerful. However, they had restrained themselves at this time. They had to give the ancient Phoenix world some face. Who goes there? A loud shout was heard from the depths of the villa. An expert berated. Yi Shiwen. As soon as these 3 words came out, many people who had already harbored thoughts in their hearts immediately reacted. Yi Shiwen is here. He's really here. They all said that they had to guard against Yi Shiwen. Could it be that there's something going on between them? Many people immediately thought. At this time, someone else said, "Are you here to attend the wedding? If that's the case, then retract your imposing manner. This is simply too impolite. Isn't the heavenly phoenix maiden looking for a son-in-law? I've specially come here to attend." That figure was getting closer and closer. Finally, a cyan figure was revealed. It was Yi Shiwen. "You're late. I heard that you were cultivating in the Nirvana pool. Perhaps you're not very clear about this. The heavenly phoenix maiden's son-in-law selection has already ended," someone explained. It was a genius of the phoenix race in the villa. "It's over? I haven't come yet. How can it be considered over?" Accompanied by a domineering ending, a cyan figure had already landed in front of everyone. It was none other than Yi Shiwen. "He's finally here." At this time, the little girl's face finally revealed a somewhat relieved expression. He had finally arrived. Although he had arrived a long time ago, it was still better than not having any news at all. Not good. If he comes at this time, won't he just run into the muzzle of a gun? Who knows how many people are waiting for this opportunity to deal with him. If he comes before, even if he wins, they won't have anything to say. But now, no matter what he does, it won't be right. The little girl quickly reacted. She knew very well that many people in the ancient Phoenix world were waiting for Yi Shiwen to deliver himself to their doorstep. So, she was constantly complaining in her heart. Yi Shiwen hadn't come before. So, what's the use of him coming now? Yi Shiwen's words were like a clap of thunder, instantly exploding in everyone's heart. Everyone stood up one after another. After a brief silence, there was an uproar. They couldn't believe what they had heard. If they didn't hear it wrong, Yi Shiwen was probably here to cause trouble. It was obviously over, but Yi Shiwen said it wasn't over yet. So what if he didn't come to cause trouble? Although they were separated by a villa, everyone's divine senses had locked onto Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen landed at the foot of the villa. Then, he walked up the stairs, and went towards the plaza inside the villa. This time, the wedding would be held in this vast plaza. "Yi Shiwen, why did you come so late?" The little girl looked at Yi Shiwen, and said in a somewhat resentful manner, "Sorry, I was held up by some matters. So I'm late." Yi Shiwen replied with a smile. "Forget it. Let's not talk about this. What's the use of you coming now? You're going to get married." The little girl complained. "I haven't even arrived yet. How can you start like this?" Yi Shiwen smiled and said. Then, he looked at the little girl and said, "Don't worry. It's all right. Leave the matters here to me." Yi Shiwen patted the little girl's head after he said that. The little girl grimaced in dissatisfaction. Yi Shiwen took a step forward. Then, he walked up the stairs, and began to walk in the direction of the villa. It can't be. Is he planning to cause trouble? He's not crazy, right? Everyone began to mutter. They couldn't believe it. Yi Shiwen was strong. However, he couldn't provoke the entire world with his individual strength. Did he really think that he was an emperor? Everyone was somewhat speechless. Many people thought that Yi Shiwen was crazy. He was arrogant, and too arrogant. This wasn't an ordinary kind of arrogance. What did he think this place was? This was the imperial city of the ancient Phoenix world. Did he think that he could get out of here alive after causing trouble here? Yi Shiwen, stop. We welcome you if you want to attend the wedding. However, don't blame us for being impolite if you want to cause trouble. An expert of the Phoenix race stepped forward and said while looking coldly at Yi Shiwen. Many experts of the Phoenix race appeared behind him. They had a somewhat relaxed smile on their faces. Their attitude was very obvious. It was obvious that they didn't put Yi Shiwen in their eyes. They didn't think that he had the ability to threaten them and others. A puny human dared to be presumptuous here. He must be tired of living. Yi Shiwen took one step at a time. However, he didn't have the slightest intention of stopping. I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me? An expert of the Phoenix race launched an attack at this time. He directly berated Yi Shiwen. He became extremely angry when he saw that Yi Shiwen had dared to ignore him. This was a middle-aged man. He was in the prime of his life. He wasn't too old. His strength was tyrannical. He had already entered the king rank. He was one of the leaders present here. His status was very noble. Get lost, Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're worthy to talk to me? How dare you? This middle-aged man suddenly became furious. He was a dignified king rank expert. However, he had been humiliated in such a way. And he hadn't put him in his eyes at all. Who do you think you are? Do you really think that you're the Phoenix King? He said in a cold voice. He then went straight in the direction of the public square. He didn't stop even for a moment. I think you want to kill yourself in this world, this middle-aged man coldly said. He had been berated by Yi Shiwen. It was an extraordinary shame and humiliation for him. He had never thought that he would be berated by a junior in such a way. His expression was indifferent. It wasn't clear how cold it was. His eyes exuded a terrifying radiance. Kill yourself in this world? I think you're still far from enough. Yi Shiwen chuckled and continued. Call Feng Yuan out. As long as he can defeat me, I'll leave immediately without another word. Yi Shiwen said in a cold voice. He was extremely confident at the same time. How could he have the confidence to defeat Feng Yuan if he didn't have such unparalleled confidence? Yi Shiwen, Feng Yuan and the Heavenly Phoenix Girl's wedding has already begun. You want to cause trouble at this time? You're too rude. You're challenging the dignity of our ancient Phoenix realm. This expert continued with a cold expression. The dignity of the ancient Phoenix realm? You can't represent the ancient Phoenix realm. Neither can Feng Yuan. I'm not here to cause trouble today. I don't want to challenge the dignity of the ancient Phoenix realm either. I just want to see Meng Han. She's looking for a son-in-law. However, I've heard that she isn't very happy about it. Yi Shiwen mercilessly exposed the lie that the ancient Phoenix realm had maintained for a long time. The complexions of the people of the ancient Phoenix realm suddenly turned ugly. Especially those who were related to this matter. Their complexions turned ashen. Apart from the experts of their Phoenix race, there were also the big shots of the major forces of the ancient Phoenix realm. There were also big shots and outstanding elites from various worlds. The Heavenly Phoenix Girl wasn't willing to get married. Once this news spread, it would undoubtedly deal a heavy blow to the reputation of the ancient Phoenix realm. Their ancient Phoenix realm had painstakingly gone through many twists and turns in order to smooth over this matter. However, it had become a joke because of Yi Shiwen's words. A big joke. How is this possible? The Heavenly Phoenix Girl is looking for a son-in-law. How could it be fake? Why would our clan choose a husband for her if she didn't agree? An expert of the ancient Phoenix realm retorted. Is that so? Let her come out and meet me if this is true. I'll leave immediately as long as she personally tells me that she's willing to get married. I won't entangle her in the slightest. Yi Shiwen spoke up in a sinking voice. His gaze had turned ice-cold. His tone had also become increasingly ice-cold. The big shots of various clans and forces suddenly became interested in this matter as they heard Yi Shiwen's words. They looked at the expressions of the people of the ancient Phoenix realm. They seemed to be in a very difficult situation. Their complexions had turned even uglier. It was very easy to prove the truth of this matter. All the doubts would be solved as long as Hua Menghan came out and said a few words. However, the people of the ancient Phoenix realm seemed to be in a very difficult situation. It seemed as if they were confirming Yi Shiwen's words that Hua Menghan wasn't willing to get married. Then, everything would become very interesting if this was the case. The dignified ancient Phoenix realm had used this kind of method to force the Heaven's Pride expert of their own clan to get married. Some people thought about all kinds of unusual things that had happened during this period of time. They felt very strange. However, all these strange things would have a reasonable explanation if this was the case. And everything would be normal. Some people were thinking about the relationship between Yi Shiwen and the heavenly Phoenix girl, Hua Menghan. It seemed that their relationship wasn't shallow. Otherwise, why would he come forward at this critical time? Could it be that there was an affair between them? Many people's hearts were beating unceasingly. However, even more people had the expression of watching a good show. After all, it would be very interesting if this was the case. They hadn't expected that they would be able to watch a good show for free after coming to the ancient Phoenix realm. Many people were also secretly shocked by Yi Shiwen's courage. He had dared to provoke a big world like the ancient Phoenix realm by himself. This could be regarded as unprecedented. And he had dared to do such a thing. Yi Shiwen, I think you're tired of living. The middle-aged man finally couldn't bear it any longer. He immediately attacked. Chapter 1778. The middle-aged man shouted coldly and immediately attacked. Boundless flames rushed out and transformed into a huge fire phoenix. Then, it majestically swooped down towards Yi Shiwen. The dreadful strength of a king-rank expert had been revealed in an instant. He understood that he couldn't let Yi Shiwen continue to talk. Otherwise, he wouldn't know what kind of things would come out. The ancient Phoenix world had lost face today. So, he couldn't allow Yi Shiwen to leave so easily. Bang! The flames burned through the void, and landed on Yi Shiwen's body with a loud rumble. Yi Shiwen didn't dodge. In fact, he didn't even move. The boundless flames disappeared. It seemed as if they had been absorbed by some kind of power. The flames had almost disappeared in an instant. They had been completely absorbed by Yi Shiwen. How is this possible? The middle-aged man was shocked. He had heard that Yi Shiwen wasn't a simple person. However, he hadn't expected that he would be so tyrannical. His attack had been completely broken by Yi Shiwen. Damn it! Don't be too arrogant! He shouted loudly. His figure exploded, and he pounced towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. He tore through the void and left many afterimages. He didn't stop at all. However, Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. He shot a cold glance at him and then slapped him. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. However, it was extremely slow in the eyes of the middle-aged man. He could even see the lines of Yi Shiwen's palm. However, it was useless. He felt that he couldn't control his own figure. He couldn't dodge in time. So, he was slapped by Yi Shiwen. Bang! He was slapped by Yi Shiwen on the spot. And his entire body was sent flying. All the teeth in his mouth had been smashed into pieces. He vomited blood and severely crashed into a big tree. Then, he rolled down. This big tree blossomed with 7 colored rays of light. And it had absorbed all the power of Yi Shiwen's attack. It was just a random big tree on the roadside. However, it was already so powerful. One could well imagine how profound the heritage of the ancient Phoenix world was. Silence. The entire place was silent. Everyone seemed to be somewhat dumbfounded as they looked at the middle-aged man who had been sent flying by Yi Shiwen's slap. That was an expert of king grade. He wasn't some trash who could be casually beheaded by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had sent a king-level expert flying with just one slap. What kind of concept was this? What kind of strength was this? No one dared to imagine it. This Yi Shiwen had dared to come here to cause trouble. Perhaps he was not an ordinary person. Yi Shiwen didn't care about the middle-aged man after sending him flying. He went straight up the stairs and continued to walk in the direction of the square. How dare you, Yi Shiwen? How dare you make trouble at the wedding? You've committed heinous crimes. Don't blame us for not giving face to your ancient human race and King Taitsong. An old voice came from the void at this time. The ancient Phoenix world had tolerated Yi Shiwen until now. They hadn't dared to attack him casually. This was largely because the deterrent power of King Taitsong was too terrifying. The existence of a half-step Emperor Realm expert was rare even in the history of the ancient Phoenix world. Such a person could be said to be a matchless character. You have to fight for your own face. You've never relied on others' charity. Yi Shiwen coldly said. I didn't intend to cause trouble today. However, I must hear Meng Han's reply. Why don't you dare to let her reply since you feel that there's no problem with what you've done? Or, have you done something dirty and shameful like I've said? Yi Shiwen's words immediately caused an uproar among the leaders of the various forces. Yi Shiwen had indeed arrived here. The ancient Phoenix world was afraid of King Taitsong. So, they didn't dare to attack Yi Shiwen directly. Then, they would let Hua Meng Han come out to speak. She would only need to say one sentence to prove that what Yi Shiwen had said was merely his own delusion. Then, his reputation would be completely destroyed. Moreover, the ancient Phoenix world would then attack again. Even King Taitsong wouldn't be able to point out a bigger mistake if he were to arrive here. However, the Phoenix race had refused to let Hua Meng Han come out. Therefore, everyone wanted to figure out the meaning behind this. I think you're still unaware of your impending doom. You may be the last disciple of King Taitsong. But, don't think that you can act presumptuously in the ancient Phoenix world. This isn't a place where you can act presumptuously. That old voice was sonorous and powerful. It was aimed directly at Yi Shiwen's heart. It was deafening. It seemed as if he wanted to nail Yi Shiwen to the pillar of shame in history. In fact, it seemed as if Yi Shiwen was a sinner of the human race. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate. His imposing aura remained the same as before. He moved forward courageously. He didn't stop at all as he continued to speak. You had forcibly taken Meng Han away a few hundred years ago. Did you ever think that I would come and take her away after a few hundred years? What? The heavenly Phoenix maiden was forcibly taken away by them? Someone said in astonishment. I hadn't expected that there would be such a secret behind this. It's no wonder that someone had said that Hua Meng Han wasn't a member of the Phoenix race. It seems that it's true. It's not a lie. The ancient Phoenix world is very interesting. Everyone in the ancient Phoenix world had different complexions on their faces. Some people knew about this matter. It wasn't strange. However, Yi Shiwen had exposed this matter. So, they were naturally very angry in their hearts. However, most people didn't know about this history. Many people only knew that Hua Meng Han was the last disciple of the Phoenix King. She possessed a mysterious bloodline. And she was very important to the Phoenix race. However, they hadn't thought that there would be such a secret behind this matter. It was obvious that everything hadn't been smooth sailing. Nonsense. How is this possible? How powerful is our Phoenix race? We have such a great reputation. So, it's impossible to forcibly take away an outsider. That's right, Yi Shiwen. You have evil intentions. You've spread such rumors. Many people of the ancient Phoenix world refused to believe this. In fact, many of Hua Meng Han's pursuers couldn't believe that their goddess had been brought to the ancient Phoenix world in such a manner. Is what I'm saying true or false? Feng Ling, do you dare to come out and speak? Didn't you say that I'm inferior to an ant? Didn't you say that I don't have the qualifications to appear in front of you? What do you think? I was an ant in your eyes back then. Do I still have the qualifications to stand in front of a phoenix that can soar to the ninth heaven like you? Yi Shiwen loudly said. His voice spread throughout the entire villa. There was a trace of madness in his expression. It had been hundreds of years. He had felt wronged and angry in his heart for hundreds of years. Hua Menghan had been taken away by Feng Ling right under his nose. He hadn't been given the slightest opportunity to salvage the situation. He hadn't been given the slightest opportunity to explain. Perhaps Yi Shiwen had been as weak as an ant in Feng Ling's eyes at that time. Perhaps no one in the entire true martial world would have been able to enter his eyes if it hadn't been for Hua Menghan. So, he would have looked at Yi Shiwen a little longer. He had been extremely angry in his heart at that time. He had also been annoyed that he had been useless. He had allowed Hua Menghan to be taken away. However, that didn't mean that Yi Shiwen would have backed down. After all, that was absolutely impossible. Hundreds of years had passed in the blink of an eye. He had been an ant in the past. However, he had arrived in the ancient phoenix world in an upright manner. You shouldn't have come. An ice-cold voice resounded at this time. Then, the aura of an incomparably tyrannical expert swept over from the plaza at the top of the mountain. It was a middle-aged man. Yi Shiwen hadn't seen this man for many years. However, he would never forget this man's face even if the world turned desolate. This man had humiliated him, and had wanted to trample him to death like an ant. Yi Shiwen would have died in Feng Ling's hands at that time if Yi Mo hadn't used the taboo technique. In fact, he wouldn't have been able to attain his present cultivation. It was a momentary mistake at that time. That's why you've taken advantage of me, Feng Ling said in an ice-cold and ruthless manner. He had taken Hua Menghan away hundreds of years ago. He hadn't put Yi Shiwen in his eyes even though Yi Shiwen had displayed the strength of a king-level expert a moment ago. Did you really make a momentary mistake? No. You wanted to kill me at that time. Unfortunately, you didn't have the ability to do so at that time. Yi Shiwen sneered and said. It could be said that Feng Ling was as unfathomable as the sea for him in the past. He couldn't have guessed what kind of realm he was in. He had casually released his imposing aura to kill him. Perhaps he would have died a long time ago if Hua Menghan hadn't risked her life to save him. Yi Mo hadn't suddenly erupted. It could be said that Feng Ling was cruel and merciless. He would cut the weeds and eliminate the root. He wouldn't leave any future troubles. Yi Shiwen had been an ant-like existence at that time. However, he had also wanted to behead Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's cultivation had improved little by little. So, he had gradually realized that Feng Ling had been a dreadful existence at the king level at that time. It could have been said that Feng Ling had crushed Yi Shiwen to death at that time without any pressure. Now, hundreds of years had passed. No one knew what level he had reached. However, Yi Shiwen had become more confident. I didn't kill you at that time. I didn't expect that you would grow to this point. However, it's not too late to make up for that mistake. We respect King Taitsong, but don't think that we're afraid of him. You've courted death. So, you can't blame anyone. You were lucky that he had fought for an opportunity to escape for you. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. So, let me send you to hell. Chapter 1779. Send me on my way? With just you? Do you think that it's still the same as it was a few hundred years ago? Yi Shiwen faintly said. This was a kind of self-confident temperament. The current Yi Shiwen had been reborn as compared to several hundred years ago. He was no longer an ordinary person. There was an indomitable aura on his body that made people admire him. It was as if he was invincible. In my opinion, the current you hasn't changed from several hundred years ago. Feng Ling frowned and said. He felt a little strange. However, he didn't take it seriously. After all, he had his own experience. You've only made a little progress in several hundred years. However, you'll be able to see my real progress in these several hundred years. Yi Shiwen looked at Feng Ling and said, "Well, let me see how much progress you've made. You'll fall here today. The competition on the road to becoming a god has nothing to do with you." Feng Ling said, "I've been waiting for this for a long time," Yi Shiwen coldly said. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with some worry. He wasn't famous in front of everyone. However, Feng Ling was completely different. Feng Ling's strength was very tyrannical. Moreover, he had been the ancient Phoenix Realm's inspector since several hundred years ago. His fame had spread throughout the entire world at that time. Now, it was said that he had already entered the mysterious realm. Could Yi Shiwen be a match for such a tyrannical opponent? Everyone was neutral at this time. However, they were more inclined towards Yi Shiwen's side. He was a tragic hero. Bang! Feng Ling attacked instantly. He was too powerful. The aura on his body boiled in an instant. It seemed as if a real god had come to this world. Some people said that the mysterious realm was the starting point of the road to immortality, and the god realm was the end of the road to immortality. Although it was separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, it already possessed some characteristics of the gods. Countless rays of light burst out behind him. It seemed as if the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky had been engraved. His dreadful aura suppressed the world. He's so strong. How can he have just entered the mysterious realm? It seems that everyone has been deceived by him. I'm afraid that many people of the older generation can't compete with Feng Ling's strength. They are indeed very strong. No wonder they are the ancient Phoenix Realm's patrol envoys. None of them are simple. The crowd immediately went into an uproar. These people could also see how terrifying Feng Ling was. That attitude of looking down on the world was not something that ordinary people could possess. Feng Ling's body was burning with endless flames. He rushed over to kill Yi Shiwen. His majestic stature exuded a strong sense of oppression. It seemed as if he wanted to suppress Yi Shiwen. "I will make you understand now. Even after a few hundred years, killing you will still be as easy as flipping my hand." Feng Ling shouted loudly. The aura on his body completely erupted without holding anything back. His gaze was incomparably cold, as if it could freeze Yi Shiwen alive. "Then come and give it a try. Don't talk nonsense." Yi Shiwen wasn't the slightest bit polite. He confronted her with equal harshness. He stepped forward step by step. He wasn't deterred by Feng Ling's imposing aura. His body also erupted with golden divine radiance. The brilliant lights overflowed and covered half of the world. It seemed as if the world was swaying along with his chi and blood. Bang! The palms of both parties fiercely collided in the void at this time. It seemed as if the sky had collapsed. A large expanse of black had appeared under the feet of both parties. This attack was incomparably dreadful. This Yi Shiwen didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Has he also entered the mysterious realm? This is impossible. How could there be no news about him? Many people looked at Yi Shiwen in disbelief. Feng Ling and Yi Shiwen were neck and neck. Many people began to doubt Yi Shiwen's realm. He was obviously a king-level expert, and that was indeed the case judging from his aura. Feng Ling hadn't used his full strength. However, a mysterious realm expert was still a mysterious realm expert. So, how could a king-level expert have the leeway to fight back? "Feng Ling, you've only reached this level after hundreds of years?" Yi Shiwen sneered. He took a step forward. He looked like a golden god. His chi and blood crazily surged under the operation of his body. Yi Shiwen's imposing aura was astonishing from afar. It seemed as if he wasn't an ordinary creature. Instead, he seemed like a god. Humph! Feng Ling didn't say anything. He directly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of flame. It shot out and burned through the endless sky. It rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The power of the Nanming mythical fire amazed everyone. They asked themselves if it was anyone else in Yi Shiwen's place. No one could block it so easily. The Nanming mythical fire was the magical power of the Phoenix race. Everyone knew how to use it. However, there was a huge disparity between the power of each person. It was obvious that Feng Ling's mastery of the Nanming mythical fire had already reached an amazing level. It was superb and had reached the point of perfection. Yi Shiwen didn't even move. The divinity on his body had formed a majestic wave. It seemed as if it could crush everything as it swept over. Rumble! The fiery red Nanming mythical fire and the golden divinity crazily collided and devoured each other. The scene was boiling. The void was completely shattered. It was extremely terrifying. Both of them were evenly matched. It seemed as if there was no difference between them. Boom! 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 Both sides fought all the way to the sky from inside the villa. Everyone was frightened when they saw this scene. Especially many people who had underestimated Yi Shiwen. His strength was far more powerful than what they had originally imagined. Feng Ling probably hasn't used his full strength. Otherwise, this kid won't be his opponent. I think so too. He hasn't raised his momentum to the peak. Obviously, he still has some leeway. Many experts of the Phoenix race nodded and said. They naturally agreed with such a statement. Stupid. Idiot. It's not that Feng Ling hasn't done his best. He just can't do his best. At this time, in a corner of the villa, Qin Lai sneered disdainfully while drinking wine. It seemed that he didn't care about these people's professional judgment. Ao Shiba, who was directly opposite him, had no choice but to support Qin Lai on this issue. He naturally couldn't say anything to support Qin Lai. However, his tacit attitude had already shown everything. It's impossible. How can Yi Shiwen be so powerful? At least on the battlefield, Yi Shiwen doesn't have the upper hand at all. Someone said in disbelief. At least, they still couldn't get rid of the state of thinking that Feng Ling was in. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen suddenly had the upper hand, and Feng Ling was just struggling to hold on. All of this seemed so unbelievable. Idiot! Qin Lai sneered. When he looked at Yi Shiwen on the battlefield, there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. At least this fellow in the demon realm didn't disappoint him. He had indeed done something earth-shattering. It was worth it for him to withdraw midway. Although it seems that they are evenly matched, haven't you noticed? Feng Ling, who has already entered the mysterious realm, can't take down Yi Shiwen, who is only in the king grade. This in itself is doubtful and unreasonable. Idiot! In the face of Qin Lai's unceremonious scolding, although everyone was embarrassed, they didn't dare to compete with Qin Lai. Whether it was Qin Lai's own strength or the martial ancestor behind him, they simply couldn't compare to him. Everyone looked in the direction of Qin Lai's words, and saw that although Feng Ling seemed to be in a very brave state, but it could be said that he was already at the mysterious realm, but he still couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's strength was even more violent, and it was even more wonderful. Just by relying on the strength of the king grade, he could completely contend with Feng Ling without the slightest difficulty. It was as if every bit of strength was used, and not the slightest bit was wasted. Seeing this, everyone really understood that perhaps the battle was far from as simple as they thought. Two flames flickered in Feng Ling's eyes. That was his origin flame, and it shot out at this time. As Qin Lai said, Feng Ling was far from being as glorious as others had imagined. Although he wasn't in a disadvantageous position, he also couldn't take down Yi Shiwen. For Feng Ling, who had already entered the state of full combat strength, this in itself was a very big problem. For him, this was simply a humiliation. Feng Ling, didn't you say that you want to solve this mistake of mine? Why don't you come? Yi Shiwen said loudly, as if he was provoking Feng Ling. You've only made so little progress for hundreds of years? Damn it, damn it, damn it! Feng Ling continued to roar, and the flames in his hands were also constantly burning through the void, completely collapsing and completely collapsing. It was unknown how many places had collapsed in an instant. It was like a landslide or a tsunami. However, he couldn't break through Yi Shiwen's defense no matter how he attacked. At this time, he looked at Yi Shiwen's eyes again, and immediately understood. How could he not understand that Yi Shiwen hadn't tried his best? Not only hadn't he tried his best, but even this draw was the result of his calculations. He was humiliating himself. This was blatantly toying with him like a monkey. The anger in his heart could burn through the vault of heaven as he thought of this. He was a dignified inspector of the ancient Phoenix world. His status was very noble. However, he had become the target of someone else's teasing. This change made him so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The image of that ant in front of him from hundreds of years ago had gradually merged with the person who was wearing a mocking smile on his face. Chapter 1780. Hundreds of years ago, Feng Ling would never have imagined that he would be forced to this point by Yi Shiwen. Impossible, how can you grow to this point? At this time, he finally began to feel incredulous. Originally, he didn't put Yi Shiwen in his eyes at all, let alone other people. From the bottom of his heart, he actually didn't put Yi Shiwen in his eyes at all. Countless stars were twinkling, and it felt as if the boundless universe was collapsing around him. Since you don't make a move, then don't blame me for making a move. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and instantly made a move in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. There was a faint sound of Tao. In an instant, he stretched out his hand, and an endless scene of landslides and tsunamis appeared in front of everyone. The coercion of one hand was enough to crush the entire universe. The terrifying and peerless divinity directly submerged the entire void, and in this golden light, Yi Shiwen was like a fallen god in the world, with unimaginably terrifying might. Many experts of the King Division were instantly horrified. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to withstand such a blow, and would explode in an instant. This Yi Shiwen was so powerful that it made everyone horrified. At this time, everyone still hadn't recovered from the shock that Yi Shiwen had given them. Although Yi Shiwen had also given everyone a formidable feeling before, but that was only because his skills had reached the pinnacle. Now, he was actually able to contend against the masters of Mysterious Realm with the strength of King grade. This showed that his understanding of the realm had already reached a shocking level. But what really shocked them was the strength that he had erupted in an instant. He had instantly surpassed the King Division, and had stepped into the Mysterious Realm. This also made many people speculate. Originally, everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was able to contend with a Mysterious Realm expert with the strength of the King Division. All of this seemed too abnormal, and many people privately speculated that it was very likely that Yi Shiwen had already stepped into the King Division. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to explain it. Now, it seemed that it was indeed so. The sky was bright, and under everyone's astonishment, Yi Shiwen's big golden hand directly struck towards Feng Ling. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Yi Shiwen's big hand turned into a big palm, and ferociously slapped Feng Ling's mouth. Feng Ling spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his mouthful of big teeth were smashed into pieces. His entire body spun rapidly like a spinning top. Then, he ferociously plunged into the bricks of the manor. Feng Ling's face was covered in blood. Silence. Everyone was dumbfounded. Someone as powerful as Feng Ling was actually sent flying by a single slap. This caused many people to be incomparably shocked. Exactly how strong was he? It was simply unimaginable. He had sent an initial profound life stage expert flying with a single slap. Exactly what benefits did Yi Shiwen obtain from the Nirvana Pond? How did he become so strong all of a sudden? In particular, Hai Weiao was gnashing his teeth as he looked at Yi Shiwen. His eyes were filled with disbelief. If he had regarded Yi Shiwen as a person that he had to eliminate before, then right now, it was very likely that Yi Shiwen had become the strongest opponent in his life. He was very clear about Yi Shiwen's strength. Although he was strong before, he was at most a king rank expert. Right now, even a profound life stage expert had been sent flying by a single slap. Such strength could be said to be frightening, and could be said to be unfathomable. At this time, Yi Shiwen quietly stood in the void. He did not say anything, and only quietly looked at Feng Ling. He was very clear about the strength of his slap. An ordinary person would have died long ago. Even if Feng Ling was a profound life stage expert, all the bones in his body would have been completely smashed. However, his heart was strangely calm. He did not have any thoughts of killing Feng Ling. He was strangely calm, and on the contrary, he felt a sense of relief. Over the past hundreds of years, Feng Ling was like a huge shadow that had been cast on Yi Shiwen's path of cultivation. Back then, Yi Mo had been utterly defeated by Feng Ling without being able to retaliate. In the end, it had directly caused Yi Mo to fall into a deep sleep for the first time. The price could not be said to be small. He had almost died a tragic death, and Hua Menghan had been taken away. For him, it was a humiliation that had lasted for hundreds of years. Now that he had gotten his revenge, his heart had calmed down. When he looked back, he saw that Feng Ling, whom he had once believed to be invincible, was now lying on the ground like a dead dog. He suddenly felt that it was somewhat ridiculous. What was the purpose of his persistence for hundreds of years? However, if it was not for his persistence for hundreds of years, he would not have been able to walk this far, and he would not have been able to hold on until now. Now there was only one obsession left. He looked at the manor, and suddenly felt a burst of comfort in his heart. It was as if the shackles had been unlocked. His state of mind had advanced by leaps and bounds. Perhaps it was not too far from the next breakthrough. Suddenly, a dreadful attack came out of the void while Yi Shiwen was sighing with emotion. The endless void collapsed under this attack, and formed a shocking crack that swept towards Yi Shiwen. This attack had come very suddenly, but Yi Shiwen's reaction wasn't slow. He suddenly spread out his hands, and endless rays of light burst out from his 5 fingers. Endless divinities spread out, and then formed a golden divine wall in front of him, and blocked the attack. Bang! An earth-shattering collision sound was heard. This astonishing attack carried a dreadful destructive power, and submerged the horizon. This. Everyone was shocked by this sudden change. Many people hadn't recovered from the shock of Yi Shiwen defeating Feng Ling so easily. But they saw an even more shocking scene. This dreadful attack had directly approached them. It was even more dreadful than Feng Ling's attack a moment ago. Everyone could only see a figure gradually emerging from the endless divine radiance. It was Yi Shiwen. Even such a dreadful attack couldn't injure him. However, he was in a somewhat difficult situation compared to the relaxed and unrestrained state he had been in a moment ago. The divine wall had collapsed in front of him. The remaining energy had been dispersed, but its power was still not small. Did I see it wrong? Who attacked? It must be the people of the ancient Phoenix world. Who else could have attacked at this time besides them? It looks like there's going to be a good show to watch. Everyone believed that Yi Shiwen's strength was extremely formidable. However, the ancient Phoenix world had been established for countless years. So, how could it be ordinary? Perhaps this was going to be a dreadful collision between Mars and Earth. Moreover, it had nothing to do with them. They could just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. After all, they wouldn't suffer any loss no matter what the outcome would be. Just as the crowd was still guessing who it was that had made a move, however, they suddenly discovered to their horror that a young man had quietly appeared in front of Yi Shiwen from the void. He was clad in a bright red wedding robe. His handsome face had been distorted by anger. Yi Shiwen immediately recognized him. He was the same young man who had instructed the Power King to attack him outside the passage that day. Yi Shiwen looked at his bright red wedding robe. So, how could he not know that this young man was Feng Yuan? He couldn't help but sneer. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. He had also noticed Feng Yuan's existence. However, he hadn't made a big fuss because he had wanted to keep a low profile. However, he hadn't expected that this person would turn out to be Feng Yuan. It seemed that he should be the husband that the ancient Phoenix world had decided to give to Hua Menghan. No wonder he had instructed people to make things difficult for him. In fact, he could even feel the sinister intentions of the opposite party. They wanted to use the ancient Phoenix world to eradicate him. He had sensed it at that time. Therefore, he hadn't attacked them directly. However, he had no other choice now. It was impossible for him to watch Hua Menghan being taken away in front of his eyes. It could be said that both sides had a deep hatred for each other. Feng Yuan didn't wait for Yi Shiwen's reply, and immediately attacked. His fist blasted out endless flames, and transformed into an earth-shattering phoenix. Each of its feathers could be seen clearly. His fist intention had reached an extremely terrifying level. Look, Feng Yuan has attacked. I was wondering who could have such an ability. Even the Phoenix King is very optimistic about Feng Yuan's strength, a member of the Phoenix race said. The people of the ancient Phoenix world clearly understood how powerful and dreadful Feng Yuan was compared to the outsiders. All of Yi Shiwen's struggles are futile. All of Yi Shiwen's struggles are futile. Feng Yuan has the strength to advance into the Tao-confirming realm. Yi Shiwen is tyrannical, but he doesn't amount to much. He has now killed his way into our ancient Phoenix realm. It's clear that he doesn't care about our ancient Phoenix realm at all. So, even if King Tai Tsang of the human race truly exists, he won't be able to find any fault with us if we kill him like this. However, an even more astonishing collision had begun before he could finish speaking. Yi Shiwen wasn't as vulnerable as he had said. On the contrary, he had launched a counterattack. A golden sword energy condensed in his hand, and burst out with formidable divine light. Then, it slashed down towards that phoenix. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion sound was heard. The collision between the flames and the golden divinity ocean had caused the void to boil. Yi Shiwen's golden sword energy and Feng Yuan's fist ferociously slashed together. A loud sound of metal colliding resounded throughout the world. A dreadful shock wave swept out, and forced the matrix inside the villa to activate. It seemed as if a formidable enemy had invaded the villa all of a sudden. The figures of the two men collided in the void, and fiercely slammed into each other. A whistling sound was heard, and the strong astral wind blew their hair into a mess. Feng Yuan's eyes flickered like two groups of flames. He was extremely angry. Chapter 1781. Before Yi Shiwen came to the ancient Phoenix domain, he had already been plotted against by Yi Shiwen. He thought that everything was going according to his plan. Who knew that Yi Shiwen would break his plan in an unexpected way? Most importantly, Yi Shiwen even dared to make a scene at his wedding. If that was the case, even if Feng Yuan got married, it would leave a permanent stain on his reputation. He would become the laughing-stock of others. When he thought of such a thing, his face instantly turned pale. He absolutely couldn't become such a laughing-stock. If that happened, he would go crazy. And all of this was done by Yi Shiwen. Only by beheading Yi Shiwen could he redeem a little bit of his reputation. This time, the shocking collision brought about a horrifying shockwave. It instantly pierced through the entire sky. Countless clouds were instantly torn apart. Since his first attack didn't work, Feng Yuan immediately attacked again. He threw another punch towards Yi Shiwen, soaring phoenix wings. Die. Die. It's best for someone like you to never appear again. Why? My pursuit for hundreds of years can't catch up to someone who hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. He still remembered that it was a snowy season. It was the first time he saw a girl as pure as snow. At that time, she wasn't even in the transcendent realm. Compared to him, who was the pride of the ancient Phoenix domain, they weren't in the same world. For him, such a person was simply an ant. In his previous world, he had always followed this simple and direct way of categorizing people. An ant, not an ant. He believed that he would definitely be the one to prove his Tao in the future. Many people in his clan had high hopes for him. They entrusted the heavy responsibility of reviving the Phoenix clan to him. Over time, he also felt that it was destined by the heavens. The heavens allowed him to reincarnate into the Phoenix clan, and wanted him to do something earth-shattering. Hence, in his simple life in the past, he only categorized people in a very simple way. Even his clansmen were the same in his eyes. However, on that day, her appearance had completely changed the world in his heart. It turned out that there weren't only ants and non-ants in this world. There was also a creature called a woman. Such a creature could miraculously attract his attention. He knew that he had fallen in love with the woman standing in the snow. Later, he found out that the woman was called Hua Menghan. She came from the human race, but she had the mixed bloodline of the heavenly Phoenix clan. This identity had become the target of attention of the upper echelons of the ancient Phoenix realm ever since it had been exposed. This was because the Sky Phoenix clan was an absolutely noble and mysterious branch within the Phoenix clan. However, all of them had perished in battle a long time ago. Therefore, this bloodline had been completely severed. However, no one had expected that they would be able to see the descendant of this bloodline here. Even if it was merely a special bloodline within the human clan, it was still an extremely precious matter for the ancient Phoenix realm. Just like the Dragon clan had many vassal and subdragon species, the Phoenix clan also had many subspecies. These subspecies could purify their own bloodline through repeated cultivation. Finally, they would enter the Nirvana pool and undergo Nirvana to become a pure-blooded Phoenix. Such a person wasn't unheard of in the history of the ancient Phoenix domain. Therefore, the arrival of Hua Menghan didn't cause the slightest ripple in the ancient Phoenix domain. There wasn't even a trace of opposition. On the contrary, the resources of the entire ancient Phoenix domain were inclined towards Hua Menghan's direction. This was also the reason why she had been able to rise so quickly in a short period of time. She had even surpassed the figures of the older generation. It was because the Phoenix King stood behind her. She had been accepted as the Phoenix King's adopted daughter. It had been thought that such a relationship could be sustained for a long time. However, the elders of the clan had started to become dissatisfied. They wanted to spread the bloodline of the heavenly sovereign. However, it would be easy for them to die prematurely if there was only Hua Menghan. And it was also at this time that he knew for the first time that there was another man's shadow in the heart of this woman whom he had regarded as a goddess. He had gone mad with jealousy ever since he had found out about this. It was the first time that he had understood what kind of feeling jealousy was. He used to be the pride of the heavens. People were jealous of everything he had since he was born. However, it was the first time that he had started to be jealous of someone else. He was jealous of that person whom he had never met before. He was jealous of that man called Yi Shiwen. This matter didn't only set off a storm in his heart. It was the same in the ancient Phoenix domain. Those stubborn elders hadn't expected that Hua Menghan already had a sweetheart. Moreover, he had turned out to be a human. Later on, they had also thought of a way to send people to the true martial domain in order to exterminate them. However, who knew that Yi Shiwen wouldn't be in the true martial domain at that time? So, they had given up. Who knew that this name would spread to their ears later on? Yi Shiwen had disappeared from the true martial domain. However, he had become a household name in the ancient Baron's continent. He was a top-notch figure of the younger generation. This was also the fundamental reason why the emissaries of the ancient Phoenix domain had looked for trouble with Yi Shiwen over and over again. He had added fuel to the fire in the background. However, who knew that this man was like an undying cockroach? He had survived time and time again. He had disappeared for hundreds of years. Just when everyone thought that he had died, and he was secretly delighted, he had returned. Moreover, he had brought back King Taitsong, a huge backer. Even the people of the ancient Phoenix domain understood King Taitsong very well. He was a person who dared to fight against the god. He wasn't someone they could afford to offend. Therefore, he didn't dare to make any moves even though he was gnashing his teeth in hatred. However, he still set up a trap. He wanted to invite Yi Shiwen over and then use the power of the ancient Phoenix domain to eliminate him. Who knew that he had miscalculated in the end? Yi Shiwen didn't fall for his trap. In the end, he also set up the last trap. It was the martial arts competition for the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden's son-in-law. As long as Yi Shiwen dared to appear, he would be killed by him. How could he not see that Yi Shiwen was merely at the king rank? In the face of a terrifying existence like him, who was at the profound realm, Yi Shiwen was nothing. It was impossible for Yi Shiwen to be his opponent. If Yi Shiwen died in the arena, even if King Taitsong was still alive, he wouldn't have any excuse to say. He wouldn't be able to continue making things difficult for Yi Shiwen. Who knew that Yi Shiwen wouldn't appear in the end? He was somewhat unwilling. At the same time, he was also somewhat rejoicing. No matter the reason why Yi Shiwen didn't appear, he had won in the end. He had won the beauty. The goddess in his heart would finally belong to him. For him, although it wasn't perfect, it was enough. In order to reach this stage today, he had spent a lot of experience. He had started planning from hundreds of years ago. He had used the thoughts of the elders in the clan who didn't want the bloodline to be passed on to outsiders. He had turned himself into a favorable candidate for this bloodline. Then, he had spent a lot of time to defeat those candidates one by one. He had become the most suitable candidate in the eyes of everyone. In order to achieve this, he had spent hundreds of years. When he was about to succeed, Yi Shiwen had actually appeared. He had actually dared to appear. The anger in his heart instantly burned. If Feng Ling hadn't made a move, then he would have been the first to make a move. He would have beaten Yi Shiwen to death. For the past hundreds of years, he had been living under the shadow of one person. That person was Yi Shiwen. He was an unparalleled enemy that he had never met before. All because of that one sentence. "Sorry, I already have someone in my heart." He didn't believe. He didn't believe that time couldn't erase everything. Compared to the man who he hadn't seen for hundreds of years, he believed that he could win the final victory. But even in the end, she still wouldn't marry him? And all of this was caused by this man named Yi Shiwen. If it wasn't for him, how could he have fallen to such a state? The fist in tension in his hand condensed into a huge phantom of a phoenix. Compared to the lifelike phoenix just now, it seemed a bit illusory, but its power was a level higher. This phantom of the phoenix shrank in the void, and then instantly turned into an amazing fist in tension of divine light. It distorted the vast sky and blasted towards Yi Shiwen's eyebrows. Bang! There was a huge roar. Yi Shiwen raised his hand, and the divine light fiercely blasted on his right palm. Puff! Endless blood splattered on Yi Shiwen's palm, and his flesh suddenly burst open. This wisp of divine light directly broke through the divinity on his palm, and blasted into his body. His figure retreated a few steps, and only then did he barely manage to offset this terrible power. One could imagine how terrible the terrible power of this blow was. It was different from the previous attack that couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen. This attack directly injured Yi Shiwen. It also made everyone finally realize that Yi Shiwen wasn't a god after all. He was still a human. It wasn't strange for him to be injured. It was just that Yi Shiwen's previous performance was too strong. However, although Yi Shiwen was repelled, his facial expression didn't change in the slightest. Instead, it became more and more indifferent. The wound on his hand also healed at an astonishing speed. The faint sound of Phoenix's cry could be heard in his body as it healed. Go to hell, why aren't you dead yet? Feng Yuan continued to roar. As long as you don't die, Meng Han won't give up. So, you can only die. Feng Yuan continued to growl in a low voice, like an injured beast whose territory had been invaded. His eyes were blood red, and he stared at Yi Shiwen, and a powerful opportunity was locked on him. Chapter 1782. His fist pressure was incomparably terrifying, as if it could completely crush the entire void. You want me to die? Interesting. I forgot to tell you, I'm an old Chinese medicine doctor. I specialize in curing all kinds of disobedience. Yi Shiwen shouted and stepped directly in Feng Yuan's direction. Countless golden waves appeared under his feet and penetrated the void. Everyone was shocked. Under Feng Yuan's continuous attacks, Yi Shiwen did not show the slightest sign of weakness. On the contrary, he continued to attack. Boom! 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 The collision between the two sides produced a horrifying energy frenzy in the void. These two people are only a few hundred years old. They're not even 1,000 years old, yet they've already grown to such an extent. I'm afraid that even the experts of the older generation can't possess such strength. If this continues, who can suppress them? A few hundred years old mysterious realm is considered a top figure no matter where. I originally thought that Feng Yuan was already extremely tyrannical, but I didn't expect that Yi Shiwen is not the slightest bit inferior. In fact, it feels like he is even stronger. Both of them have the potential to prove their Tao. In the future, they will either be crowned kings or become gods. They will both embark on an unprecedented path. Specialize in curing all kinds of disobedience? How arrogant! At this time, Feng Yuan's face was sullen. He stepped forward, and endless flames began to condense on his fist. Even though he was very far away, he still blasted out a sky full of light, which turned into a fist principle. The fist fiercely fell on Yi Shiwen, and a huge hole was blasted in the void. Whether it's arrogance or not, you'll know once you try. Yi Shiwen sneered. Golden rays of light continuously appeared under his feet, drowning the sudden attack of the flames. Boom! Suddenly, the void crazily shattered. Countless flames boiled out of the chaos, and instantly burned towards Yi Shiwen. In the void, the flames condensed into a huge phoenix. On the feathers there were flowing lights, exuding a terrifying brilliance. Phoenix, he actually condensed a phoenix. Although it is clearly condensed from flames, it is simply lifelike. If it wasn't for the fact that there is no aura of a living creature, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to distinguish it at all. This incomparably huge phoenix's claws were like two huge pincers, and fiercely grabbed towards Yi Shiwen's direction. The sky turned into a sea of fire wherever it went. Moreover, it wasn't a simple sea of fire. On the contrary, it instantly turned into a domain of flames. As the phoenix flew past, it instantly formed a huge domain, and directly shrouded Yi Shiwen. He wanted to bring Yi Shiwen into his domain, and then kill him directly. Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. How could he not see it? For him, this was nothing at all. He took a step forward, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, an endless fist intent condensed on his fist. The mighty coercion condensed in an instant, and suddenly formed a vast universe. This universe, with Yi Shiwen as the center, directly expanded out, as if a real universe was being born, and Yi Shiwen, who stood in the center of the universe, was the real god of the center of the universe, ruling the heavens, and no one could resist. Immediately afterward, the sea of fire and the flames collided fiercely, as if two vast worlds had collided together. It was extremely terrifying. At the place where the collision occurred, countless world rules instantly collapsed and engulfed each other. This was the collision of the two peoples' fist intent in the void. In the confrontation, both sides had already fought with real fire, and did not hold back at all. It's useless. As I said, I specialize in all kinds of disobedience. Yi Shiwen's black hair flew up and danced wildly in the sky. His eyes became even more fierce. Yi Shiwen was calm and composed. He shouted loudly, and countless golden waves swept up under his feet, turning into golden swords, and fiercely slashed into the sea of fire. Hundreds and thousands of golden swords broke everything, and all the flames were annihilated by the sword aura, and were instantly cut into pieces. Then, at this time, these golden swords directly condensed in the void, an incomparably powerful sword pressure raged out, turning into a heavenly treasure sword, and then directly slashed towards the huge phoenix. At this time, the complexions of many of the lords of the major forces who were watching the battle instantly changed, and they couldn't believe their eyes as they looked at Yi Shiwen. Even the masters of Xian realm wouldn't be able to block such an attack, but Yi Shiwen was able to casually launch such an attack. Didn't it mean that his strength was far above the ordinary masters of Xian realm? It was no wonder that he had so much courage. He had dared to challenge the ancient Phoenix world, and had openly clamored to take away Hua Menghan. Without such strength to back him up, he wouldn't be able to do anything even if he was in the right. Moreover, in the opinion of most people, Yi Shiwen was far from being in the right. In fact, many king-ranked experts didn't even dare to open their eyes. Their eyes were firmly fixed on these two people. Whether it was Feng Yuan or Yi Shiwen, their offensive had great reference value for them. It would be of great benefit to them when they stepped into the Profound Realm. Profound Realm experts were very rare. Therefore, a fight between Profound Realm experts was naturally even rarer. Many king-ranked experts hadn't even seen a fight between Profound Realm experts in their entire life. Moreover, these two people were clearly peak experts who had already stepped into the initial profound life stage. This caused them to feel both envious and jealous. They were envious that they had already reached the profound life stage, which many people could only dream of reaching in their entire lives, at the mere age of a few hundred years. These two people were merely a few hundred years old, yet they had already stepped into the profound life stage at such a young age. On the other hand, they had already lived for thousands of years, yet they were still unable to step into the profound life stage. This also meant that it would be extremely difficult for them to step into the profound life stage in the future. All of them knew this in their hearts. Therefore, they had to grab hold of every possible opportunity and do their utmost to absorb the energy. They were not stupid. These thousands of years had not been spent in vain. Their foundations were incomparably deep. Unexpectedly, they were able to see through some trick. Furthermore, there were even some people who had benefited greatly. If they wanted to break through to the profound life stage in the future, their chances of success would greatly increase. Many people were dumbfounded. The attack power was astonishing. This Yi Shiwen can really fight with Feng Yuan. Even some of the old antiques of the ancient Phoenix realm had a change of expression when they saw this scene. They had thought that Feng Yuan was invincible among the younger generation. Even if he wasn't invincible in the profound world battlefield, he would still be able to occupy a place. Who would have thought that Yi Shiwen would be able to fight Feng Yuan to a standstill? It was simply like a miracle. Specialized in dealing with all kinds of dissatisfaction? Interesting. Qin Lai drank a mouthful of wine and said with a beaming smile. He realized that his fellow clansman was becoming more and more interesting. Ever since this fellow clansman had appeared, he had repeatedly exceeded his expectations. He had never imagined that he would actually be able to step into the profound life stage in such a short period of time. Not only had he stepped into the profound life stage, But hadn't Hai Wuya also stepped into the profound life stage? Stepping into the profound life stage didn't mean that one could immediately be compared to those old fellows who had stepped into the profound life stage first. They had incomparably deep accumulations. Some of them had even stepped into the profound life stage for hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. They had suppressed their cultivation at the profound life stage and planned to break through to the next few realms in one fell swoop. Therefore, even though Hai Wuya had similarly stepped into the profound life stage and had been humiliated so miserably by Aoshiba, he didn't dare to rashly find trouble with Aoshiba, the son of the sea god. What a great reputation! However, to be able to step into the profound life stage at such a young age, which of them didn't have an extraordinary background? Which of them didn't have an extraordinary bloodline? Not to mention that Aoshiba had the bloodline of the Golden Dragon clan, even Hai Wuya himself had an extraordinary background. At this stage, it could be said that there were no longer any commoners. There were only nobles. Many people might seem to be very low-key and didn't know the identity of this person. However, once the name of their ancestor was mentioned, it would usually be famous and could shake the heavens. Although the identity of one's ancestor didn't represent one's current strength, the more glorious one's ancestor was, the more resources they would leave behind. It was far beyond the limits of what commoners could imagine. This was especially true for clans that had produced titled kings and emperors. They were extremely glorious and possessed wealth that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. What was the background of this Yi Shiwen? At the same time, many people were thinking the same thing as him. What exactly was Yi Shiwen's identity? Was he just a disciple of the Marquis clan? No matter how they looked at it, it didn't seem like it. The Yi clan had an illustrious reputation in the ancient desolation. However, in the eyes of these people, it was basically nothing. Titled Marquis? What did that count for? Only the forces established by titled kings would be able to enter their eyes. These peak experts often came from the bloodline of titled kings. For example, Feng Yuan. Although he was also from the Phoenix clan, there were countless bloodlines in the Phoenix clan. Not all of them had produced titled kings. And those bloodlines that had produced titled kings would naturally become direct descendants of the Phoenix clan. Naturally, they would also become large bloodlines that stood above everyone else. And Feng Yuan had come from one of these bloodlines. How could someone as amazing as Yi Shiwen come from such a mediocre clan? However, the corners of Qin Lai's mouth flashed with a somewhat self-deprecating smile. He muttered to himself, "It seems that I've really fallen into a demonic barrier. Who said that heroes must come from those peak forces? Those incomparably glorious forces today were established by many ancestors who were merely ordinary people in the past. I've really underestimated the heroes of the world." Chapter 1783. While everyone was discussing spiritedly, the battle between Yi Shiwen and Feng Yuan in the sky had already reached the point of perfection. Yi Shiwen casually attacked in the sky. Golden fist waves formed golden lightning that turned into universes that blotted out the sky and the earth as they bombarded Feng Yuan. Compared to Yi Shiwen, Feng Yuan was even more unrestrained. He directly ran amidst these golden waves and sharp swords. The Nanmingli fire that was protecting his body directly evaporated all the golden waves within a 10-meter radius. These golden waves were simply no match for him. They couldn't even get close to him. All the laws around him lost their effect. Only the law of fire could exist forever. No one could shake the power of the law of fire around him. "Break for me!" Feng Yuan shouted loudly. The flames on his body condensed, and he blasted out punch after punch. Each punch could blast out a huge fire phoenix that seemed to be able to crush the heavens. "Suppress everything for me!" Yi Shiwen didn't want to be outdone. He confronted Feng Yuan directly. His hands directly tore out endless golden light. Everything was completely torn apart. He forcibly tore open a path towards Feng Yuan. He was running amok like an overlord. His body carried a terrifying aura. Feng Yuan's fist momentum was unparalleled. However, Yi Shiwen's speed wasn't ordinary. He didn't hesitate at all and directly rushed in front of Feng Yuan. A huge golden hand flew out and turned into a huge golden cage on the spot, enveloping Feng Yuan. It was as if it wanted to seal the entire world. No one would be able to escape from its hand. It was extremely powerful. His golden hand transformed into a cage that suppressed everything in the blink of an eye. Heaven and earth were in front of this cage, and there was nothing they could do to resist it. At the same time, an incredible power surged out of him. What is that? Many tyrannical old antiques opened their magic eyes one after another and looked at the golden hand. They all discovered that this golden hand was extraordinary. It wasn't as simple as an ordinary golden hand. On the contrary, it contained a powerful force that suppressed everything. It seemed as if it wanted to suppress everything in the world. They opened their magic eyes and instantly saw through all illusions. At this moment, they clearly saw that this golden hand was formed by a huge seal character. This huge seal character formed a book of words that shone brightly in the sky. It suppressed all sorts of power. Everything, including laws and laws, was nothing in front of this seal character. What is that? He actually has a pseudo-Dao rune? Many people were instantly horrified. If Yi Shiwen, being an ordinary expert of the profound life stage, was not enough to cause them to be horrified, then the word seal had completely shocked everyone. How is this possible? Even many old antiques and old seniors that I know don't have this pseudo-Dao rune. How can a junior like him have it? He came from the ancient desolation. The ancient desolation used to be the demon realm many years ago. Have you all forgotten that the ancient desolation used to be extremely glorious for a period of time? It was the headquarters of the demon race. Who knows how many characters that shook the heavens came from there? Don't underestimate us, you bastard. At this moment, everyone in the ancient desolation felt proud and elated when they saw the shocked expressions of the crowd. The glory of the demon realm was something that had happened in the distant past. It was even something that had happened before the mythological era. Naturally, the events of that era had no deterrent effect on the people of the present. Even so, the demon realm had once been glorious. Perhaps the characters of that era had died one after another. However, the legacies that those characters had left behind had not been fully excavated even now. At this moment they could finally proudly say, "You country bumpkins, have you really seen a tycoon?" Pseudo-Dao runes were extremely rare in many worlds. However, for the forces of the ancient desolation, who didn't have a few pseudo-Dao runes? Pseudo-Dao runes also existed in their forces. However, there weren't many of them. What were pseudo-Dao runes? They were the characters used by the characters that had truly confirmed the Dao. Their characters weren't ordinary characters, but they were the concentrated embodiment of the rules, laws, and comprehension of the characters. Although pseudo-Dao runes weren't as exaggerated as Dao runes, since they were called pseudo-Dao runes, they naturally possessed some of the supreme might of Dao runes. Ordinary people couldn't understand them. If someone could obtain a pseudo-Dao rune, even if they could only comprehend one word, they would be able to ascend and become a world-shaking expert. Those who could leave behind pseudo-Dao runes were all famous characters in the past. Naturally, it wouldn't be difficult to become a peerless powerhouse if one could comprehend the pseudo-Dao runes. To put it bluntly, Dao runes were the characters used by those who had confirmed the Dao to record their Dao. They weren't meant to be seen, but to be experienced with one's heart. Just from the number of pseudo-Dao runes in the major forces, one could see how glorious the demon realm was in the past. There were probably so many people who had confirmed the Dao that other worlds couldn't even catch up to. Thinking up to there, many people even had looks of greed in their eyes. It was a pseudo-Dao rune. If they could obtain it and comprehend it, they would at the very least become a peerless figure, a figure that could shake the heavens and earth. Yi Shiwen had used this seal character to suppress the yin-yang life and death diagram within his body. Not only the yin-yang life and death diagram, but also the demon seed within his body. It was also being suppressed by this seal character. Back then, there were these two scourges in Yi Shiwen's body, so it could be said that he didn't even have half of his combat power. Now, not only was the demon seed broken, but it had also become his nourishment, helping him to directly break through from the celestial realm to the king realm. After the battle in the Nirvana pool, the yin-yang life and death diagram in his body had been completely perfected, so there was no need to suppress it at all. His combat power was also completely liberated. This was the reason why he had such confidence. He hadn't tried a full-scale battle for a long time. Because of the existence of the demon seed and the yin-yang life and death diagram, he could almost only fight with his tail between his legs. It was unlike this time where he could fight to his heart's content. And his first real opponent after he was truly liberated was Feng Yuan. In the face of such a tyrannical figure, he could directly attack without any scruples. He didn't have to worry about anything. Yi Shiwen's word seal sealed everything. All the principles and rules stopped flowing in an instant and began to be isolated. The word seal transformed into a big hand and began to grab towards Feng Yuan at lightning speed. It seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. In fact, it was so fast that it tore the sky apart in an instant. However, at this time, just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was about to control everything and use the seal character to directly suppress Feng Yuan finally made his move. He suddenly opened his eyes and opened his mouth to shout, "Fire!" In the void, countless flames began to condense around his body, instantly forming a sea of fire. An ancient character slowly rose from these flames, carrying a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. In an instant, it blasted towards Yi Shiwen's seal character. Boom! Terrifying. This was a terrifying collision. Two ancient characters fiercely collided in the void. One was the seal character, and the other was the fire character. Both were terrifying ancient characters with great power. Both were condensed from the lifetime power of a senior before he passed away in meditation. It could be said to be earth-shattering. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that under the suppression of Yi Shiwen's seal character, Feng Yuan still had the strength to fight. He also had an ancient character on his body. In the eyes of these forces' big shots, they were extremely distressed. This was simply a reckless waste of natural resources. Whether it was the ancient Phoenix domain or the ancient Desolate era, pseudo-Dao runes were everywhere. They were completely overflowing. Otherwise, why would they be given to the younger generation to use? In their world, the appearance of an existence that could condense pseudo-Dao runes was already an earth-shattering event. Even so, the Almighty who had the ability to condense pseudo-Dao runes might not be willing to condense pseudo-Dao runes, so that the younger generation would benefit from it. Moreover, there was a high probability that they would fail. Therefore, pseudo-Dao runes were very rare in their eyes. Even the masters of the major forces like them had only seen pseudo-Dao runes. Now they could actually see the collision of pseudo-Dao runes. For them, this trip was absolutely not in vain. In fact, many people even sighed in their hearts. These two young juniors were so amazing. The new generation really surpassed the old. They were going to be slapped to death on the beach. Bang! That was a terrible collision. Whether it was the fire character or the seal character, both of them could be said to be extremely terrifying. The moment they collided with each other, they directly sublimated to the extreme, bursting out brilliant brilliance. It was an intense collision like a comet crashing into the earth. For a moment, the entire world seemed to be silent. Everyone couldn't hear anything. They could only see the collision of the two huge ancient characters in the void between the heaven and the earth. The entire void collapsed silently, revealing a pitch-black chaos. Countless chaos poured out, and fell down like clouds, smashing everything. This scene looked very terrifying. Everyone had already forgotten about everything. They were just staring at everything in front of them in a daze. The collision of the two ancient characters had attracted all their attention. Chapter 1784. This was a pure competition of the great Tao. Whether it was the word seal or the word fire, they were the lifetime understanding of the great Tao. Although the points of understanding were different, whether it was the word seal or the word fire, it was simply unattainable for them. It was a kind of realm, a realm that was far beyond everyone's understanding. Any word was worth studying for a lifetime, let alone a collision like this. Feng Yuan's expression was indifferent. His eyes were very indifferent. Yi Shiwen's reflection was reflected in his eyes. He said coldly, "It's useless. You can't be my opponent. Although I'm very surprised that you have such a pseudo-Dao rune, you can't be my opponent. The word fire is the essence of the 5 elements. It is one of the most powerful words in the world. It is the rule and also the law. It is not something that you can resist. Is that so?" Yi Shiwen didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. He once again rushed over to kill. He swung his fists like a huge millstone. Each of his fists was more than 1,000 caddies heavy. It was very terrifying. It was as if the stars of the universe had directly fallen to the ground. Even if it is the word fire, so what? Don't you understand? Each of the seniors who have reached this step is an earth-shattering existence. Whether it is the word fire or the word seal, there is no difference at all in our level. Do you think that your mastery of the word fire can surpass mine? Yi Shiwen sneered disdainfully. Boom! 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 In the void, the collision of the two ancient words in the void made everyone exclaim. They couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Many people who had bad intentions couldn't help but have some doubts at this time. In a collision of this level, even if they wanted to attack these ancient words, they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of the ancient words. They would be completely obliterated. Feng Yuan's word, fire, could be said to have earth-shattering destructive power. The word, fire, originally represented destruction. Only by destroying everything could one be reborn. The word, fire, represented the meaning of destruction. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen's word, seal, was meant to seal this destructive power. Nothing in the world could escape from the word, seal. It would be useless for anyone or any force to cause trouble under the influence of the word, seal. On the contrary, it would be a ridiculous joke. One was doing his utmost to destroy, while the other was doing his utmost to restrain, not allowing him to destroy. This was a confrontation between two kinds of Daos. At the same time, it was also a confrontation between Yi Shiwen and Feng Yuan. As Yi Shiwen had said, those who could condense pseudo-Dao runes might be divided into strong and weak ones. However, for people at Yi Shiwen and Feng Yuan's level, there was no difference in strength. For them, the real deciding factor wasn't which of the two ancient characters was more powerful, but who had a better grasp of the ancient characters. Competing in mastery? You? How many years have you been cultivating? I've already obtained the word, fire, since hundreds of years ago. I've been studying it day and night. Do you think you can be compared to me? I'm from the Phoenix clan. The word, fire, is innately compatible with my fate. I've already refined it to the acme of perfection. Do you think you're my opponent? Ridiculous. Feng Yuan burst into loud laughter. His expression was ice-cold, and his tone was harsh. He simply wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. He didn't want to give him any way out. What? From the looks of it, Yi Shiwen is in danger. I originally thought that he would be able to determine the outcome of this battle by using the word seal. Who would have thought that Feng Yuan also has an ancient character? Moreover, his mastery of it seems to be even more profound than Yi Shiwen's. These young people are really tyrannical and terrifying. I'm afraid that no one can truly know where their bottom line is until the very last moment. Yes, it's really tyrannical and terrifying. Yi Shiwen is also very tyrannical and can be considered as a heaven's pride expert. However, he ended up encountering Feng Yuan, who is even more tyrannical than him. Although I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter Yi Shiwen had, the difference in their cultivation age is still obvious. I'm afraid that he won't be Feng Yuan's opponent. Everyone was once again pessimistic about Yi Shiwen. Indeed, compared to Feng Yuan's fire character, the seal character seemed to be inferior. Moreover, Feng Yuan might have mastered the fire character for a longer period of time than Yi Shiwen had cultivated. Most importantly, the Phoenix race was born with the attribute of fire. They had a unique advantage in refining this pseudo-Dao rune. Now everything will end for me. Break for me, break for me! Feng Yuan roared. His loud roar drove the fire character and launched an earth-shattering attack towards the seal character. Rumble! Under the impact of the fire character, the huge seal that had transformed into a cage began to crack. It simply scared everyone to death. The fact that cracks had appeared on the ancient character was undoubtedly a huge blow to them. For them, the pseudo-Dao rune itself was a peerless divine object that was very rare to see. For them, the collision of two pseudo-Dao runes was something they had never seen before. They couldn't imagine what kind of scene it would be when one side cracked. It's useless. I've said it before. I specialize in curing all kinds of disobedience. Yi Shiwen sneered. His body continued to emit golden rays of light. The cracks that had appeared on the seal character were repaired bit by bit under the replenishment of the golden rays of light. So what if you've cultivated for a long period of time? How do you know that my comprehension is not as profound as yours just because I've cultivated for a short period of time? What a joke! I was able to enter the profound life realm in such a short period of time. Don't tell me you still don't understand? Time is like a fleeting cloud to me. Don't take it too seriously. Yi Shiwen fiercely clenched his steel teeth, and the aura on his body began to unceasingly spurt out. Moreover, it became more and more intense. Soon, a huge tornado formed around his body, and his entire body was wrapped in it. Suppress it! He shouted loudly. A huge hand directly slammed down on the spot. Rumble! A huge rumbling sound was heard. The huge hand directly slammed onto the seal character. The seal character seemed to have received a strong supplement. In an instant, a powerful light burst out from it and forcefully suppressed the attack of the fire character. Impossible! How is this possible? How can you understand the seal character to such an extent? Feng Yuan's eyes flashed with a look of disbelief. At this moment, he finally panicked a little. He had always thought that victory was within his grasp. In the end, he kept retreating under Yi Shiwen's continuous attacks. Perhaps Yi Shiwen wasn't as simple as he had imagined. Yi Shiwen only sneered and didn't answer. Perhaps Feng Yuan would never have imagined that there was a mysterious space within Yi Shiwen's body that could help him deduce various martial arts principles. Even this kind of pseudo-Dao rune would be extremely difficult for ordinary people to comprehend. However, it was nothing for Yi Shiwen. The only thing he needed was endless energy. As for Yi Shiwen, who had just extorted a large sum of money from the major forces of the ancient wilderness and inherited the Demon King's treasure, it could be said that he didn't lack energy at all. Therefore, even if he hadn't cultivated for a long time, his understanding of the seal character wasn't as shallow as everyone thought. In fact, it might have even reached a shocking level. What's so strange about that? Age means nothing to me, Yi Shiwen faintly said. It feels good to fight with all my strength. I haven't fought with all my strength for a very long time. Now, I will let you see the real gap between you and me. I will also let you understand why Meng Han chose me and not you. Yi Shiwen's imposing aura became increasingly tyrannical. He wanted to prove to everyone that Hua Meng Han hadn't misjudged him. Moreover, he wasn't as unbearable as everyone thought he was. He wanted to prove that he was worthy of Hua Meng Han even if she was the legendary Heavenly Phoenix Girl. At the same time, he wanted to dispel the ambitions of those who harbored evil intentions. Only with great strength could one truly suppress everything. Under Yi Shiwen's control, his seal character began to condense into a phantom in the void. This was the phantom of the senior who had condensed the seal character. It was a peerless figure that seemed capable of shattering the heavens. The illusory figure continued to bombard the fire character. Under the pressure of the seal character, the fire character began to sublimate. The origin spirit within it also awakened, turning into an incomparably gigantic god of flames. A single punch and a kick could shatter the void. Under Yi Shiwen's control, the peerless figure gradually transformed into Yi Shiwen's appearance. It was exceptionally magical. He kept swinging his huge fists, which were like small mountains bombarding Feng Yuan. Bang! 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 The flame giant wasn't Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. Under the constant bombardment of the seal powerhouse controlled by Yi Shiwen, the flame giant was constantly retreating in the void. It didn't give the opponent any time to prepare. It was instantly defeated like a landslide. In just a moment, it had been directly suppressed for thousands of meters. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Finally, the seal character master found a flaw in the constant bombardment. His fist blasted out endless rays of light and fiercely blasted into the chest of the flame giant. Crack! 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 Everyone only heard a loud cracking sound. Then, they saw that the flame giant had completely collapsed in front of everyone's eyes. It was as if a small mountain had collapsed in front of them. After the seal character master defeated the flame giant, he didn't stop and immediately grabbed Feng Yuan with the power of thunder. Chapter 1785. Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast. He directly attacked Feng Yuan without any scruples. Stop! A tyrannical aura came from the void at this time, and Yi Shiwen's sealed powerhouse was smashed to pieces on the spot. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he looked at the void. The yin-yang life and death diagram inside his body began to rotate unceasingly. It was exuding the power of life and death. A tyrannical figure descended from the sky at this time. Phoenix King. Even the Phoenix King has been alarmed. Someone immediately recognized this person. He was the king of the entire ancient Phoenix world, the Phoenix King. He was the de facto ruler of the ancient Phoenix world. Yi Shiwen fixed his eyes on him and saw that he was a young man. He had a fair complexion and was extremely handsome. He was dressed in a royal robe. He looked incomparably majestic. His every move exuded a great majesty. This was the so-called "don't get angry." Yi Shiwen, enough! The Phoenix King glanced at Yi Shiwen and said. It seemed that he wasn't unfamiliar with Yi Shiwen. In fact, he could even call out Yi Shiwen's name. He has already been defeated. Do you still want to make a scene? Phoenix King, I don't want to make a scene. I know that the ancient Phoenix world has a profound heritage. I have also heard that you have taken care of Meng Han here. However, Meng Han has been forced to marry this guy. Please forgive me. I can't let this go. I have come here today to take her away. If you want me to give up, then you'll have to step over my dead body. Yi Shiwen replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. His expression didn't change even in the face of a character like the Phoenix King. He could feel that the strength of the Phoenix King was unfathomable. However, it wasn't as if he didn't have a trump card. So, he could still put up a fight. In short, He absolutely couldn't watch Hua Menghan being forced to marry someone else. "You're really stubborn," the Phoenix King sighed and said. His tone was no longer cold. However, there was some helplessness in it. "Today's matter is over. Don't make a scene. Menghan has already escaped. You won't get any results even if you continue to make a scene." What? Yi Shiwen hadn't yet reacted to Phoenix King's words, but the people below were already in a complete mess. What did he mean by Hua Menghan had already escaped? This wedding was originally held for Feng Yuan and Hua Menghan. But now, the bridegroom had been beaten to such a sorry state, and the bride had simply run away. What was going on? What kind of joke was this? Everyone's first reaction was that the Phoenix King was joking. Then, their second reaction was that the Phoenix King was deceiving Yi Shiwen in order to send him away. However, they soon discovered that the complexion of the Phoenix King was very dignified. It didn't seem like he was joking at all. They couldn't help but be startled. Could it be that Hua Menghan had truly escaped? If that was the case, then this matter would become very serious. Moreover, no one had been able to stop Yi Shiwen when he had forced his way into the wedding. The reputation of the ancient Phoenix world could be considered to have been thoroughly destroyed. Their prestige was no longer there. Perhaps it would be very difficult for people to believe that the ancient Phoenix world was invincible in the future. Moreover, the internal contradictions of the ancient Phoenix world had also been exposed. Sure enough, the rumors were saying that Hua Menghan wasn't willing to marry Feng Yuan. All of this was just a political show. Who would have thought that this show would turn out like this? Everyone looked at the Phoenix King. They didn't know how he was going to deal with this situation. Even Yi Shiwen was among them. He hadn't expected that there would be such a twist in the end. Hua Menghan had unexpectedly left in advance. This had left him dumbfounded. He couldn't judge whether the Phoenix King's words were true or not. However, he also knew that the Phoenix King wouldn't joke about this matter. After all, the ancient Phoenix world wouldn't just lose a lot of face if this matter were to be exposed in the future. Feng Yuan was completely disheartened compared to the shocked Yi Shiwen. He hadn't expected that Hua Menghan would refuse to accept him even after he had been defeated by Yi Shiwen. He hadn't expected that Hua Menghan would still refuse to accept him even after he had done so much. She had even decided to run away from the wedding. He was no longer in the mood to stay here. So, he walked towards the villa step by step. The originally festive villa looked very ironic at this time. It was truly ridiculous. What? Hua Menghan has escaped? Damn it! How can she do such a thing? Does she know that our ancient Phoenix world will become the laughingstock of the entire heavens? Damn it! I've said that those who aren't of our race will have a different heart. This Hua Menghan can't be nurtured. After all, she's also a human being. She's not a member of our Phoenix race. Unlike Feng Yuan, who had lost his soul, many old antiques suddenly became furious. For them, the face of the ancient Phoenix world was more important than anything else. There was nothing they couldn't sacrifice for the sake of the ancient Phoenix world. Hua Menghan had been forced to marry Feng Yuan by these people. Hua Menghan had escaped at this time. And the ancient Phoenix world would inevitably become a laughingstock for some time. This was something they couldn't tolerate. You big liar, hurry up. Sister Hua has escaped. Yi Shiwen received the message from that little girl at this time. He immediately understood that this matter was true. Hua Menghan had escaped. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Why would he come to kill her if that was the case? I'll take my leave if that's the case. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said. You want to leave? Where do you think you're going? An ice-cold shout came from the inside of the villa at this time. An ice-cold big hand rushed towards Yi Shiwen to grab him. Then, it ferociously slammed down with the momentum of Mount Tai. Bang! An incomparably loud sound was heard. A dreadful collision occurred, and the void collapsed. It was an extremely dreadful scene. The old antiques of the ancient Phoenix world have made their move. I'm afraid that this matter is going to get out of hand. There are many experts hiding in the ancient Phoenix world. However, they haven't made their move yet. It's because they're giving face to King Taizong. They don't want to fall out with a king-level expert. However, Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan have made the ancient Phoenix world lose a lot of face. So, it would be strange if they could endure this. I'm afraid that Yi Shiwen won't be able to escape this calamity this time. Everyone suddenly burst into an uproar, and they started to discuss spiritedly. What? Yi Shiwen is all right? Quickly look, quickly look. Someone suddenly screamed. Then, everyone quickly looked towards the sky. Sure enough, the smoke and dust dispersed in all directions. Yi Shiwen, who was in the center, wasn't injured at all. Above his head, a scroll unfolded and continuously hovered above his head. The power of life and death hung down, protecting him within it. The attack just now had been blocked by the yin-yang life and death diagram. What kind of divine tool is that? How can it be so powerful? It even has some demonic aura. Could it be a demonic tool? Suddenly, many people were shocked. Everyone could see that Yi Shiwen had relied on this divine tool to block the attack and survive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Only the big shots of the ancient Baron's continent could roughly see some clues. That power of life and death. Could it be the yin-yang life and death diagram? It must be. Only the legendary yin-yang life and death diagram could possibly have such power. The legendary yin-yang life and death diagram is a Dao tool. Even if Yi Shiwen couldn't exert much of its power, even a small portion of its power would be enough for him to protect himself. Not only were everyone shocked, but the old antique who had attacked was also stunned. Then, he became even more furious. His figure directly rushed out. It was a tall old man in a plain robe. At this moment, he stared at Yi Shiwen with an ashen face. So, you don't put our ancient Phoenix realm in your eyes because you have such a divine tool? Arrogant, despotic, and insolent. The old antique's voice trembled with anger. He couldn't help but be agitated because he was the ancestor of Feng Yuan's bloodline. All of this was orchestrated by him. However, in the end, it was completely destroyed by Yi Shiwen. Now, Hua Menghan had escaped. Although the ancient Phoenix realm had lost face, their bloodline's reputation in the ancient Phoenix realm had also plummeted. They had put in so much effort, but it was all for someone else. How could he not be angry? It was simply a bolt from the blue. Humph, I'm arrogant, despotic, and insolent? How could this have happened if you hadn't forced Menghan to marry Feng Yuan? Yi Shiwen sneered. He didn't yield even a little bit. The yin-yang life and death diagram above his head was constantly rotating, and had completely protected him. That has nothing to do with you. That's our ancient Phoenix realm's internal affair. How can we allow outsiders like you to meddle in it? Do you think that you can act so unscrupulously because you have King Taizong's support? Moreover, Hua Menghan has consumed so many of our resources. I don't know how many heavenly treasures we have spent on her. Now we're just making her get married. What's so excessive about that? The old antique angrily looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Who asked you to spend heavenly treasures on her? That's ridiculous. You're saying that we're begging you to nurture her. Did you ever think about whether she was willing or not when you forcibly took her away?" Yi Shiwen coldly said, "Now you're asking for repayment? She's a direct descendant of the heavenly Phoenix bloodline. So, she naturally has the obligation to contribute to the ancient Phoenix realm. This is determined by her bloodline." The old antique stared at Yi Shiwen and said, "That's right. You don't really care about what she thinks. She's just a tool for you. So, there's no need for her to talk nonsense with you." Yi Shiwen replied without any trace of politeness. "Don't speak so glibly. I'll take you down first if that's the case. I don't believe that Hua Menghan won't come back obediently while you're in our hands. Chapter 1786. Don't flatter me. In that case, I will take you down first. I don't believe that Hua Menghan won't come back obediently while you are in our hands. This old antique absolutely couldn't accept the fact that Hua Menghan had escaped. Now that Hua Menghan had escaped, he also knew that this matter wasn't that simple. However, he believed that Hua Menghan had dared to escape the marriage for Yi Shiwen. So, as long as he could control Yi Shiwen, wouldn't she come back obediently? Die! He roared and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen with a monstrous, imposing manner. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. A wisp of chaotic aura dispersed from his body in all directions. It was mysterious and powerful. Bang! The old antique directly blasted a fist. It carried a monstrous aura and swept over like a mountain range. It contained a world-destroying fluctuation. The void was completely shattered and formed a huge crack. It then fiercely bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. Crash! An incomparably powerful astral wind was formed and swept in all directions. This was the true power of a mysterious realm expert. Everyone was shocked, especially the big shots of various worlds. They were undoubtedly stunned. The strength of this old antique was tyrannical to a terrifying extent. The yin-yang life and death diagram above Yi Shiwen's head automatically flew out and directly swept out the yin and yang energies in the void. This represented the power of life and death. It directly wreaked havoc in the sky and issued an immeasurable shock wave which directly shook the sky. Bang! The yin-yang life and death diagram fiercely collided with this dreadful energy. With a rumbling sound, the void completely collapsed. Phoenix King just quietly watched from the side. He didn't have any intention of intervening in this fight. He didn't have any intention of helping the old antique either. In the eyes of many people, this meant that the Southern Ming Empire was here. Thump, thump, thump. Yi Shiwen continuously retreated several steps while the old antique's body slightly swayed. It was obvious that the winner between the two sides had been decided. However, everyone didn't think so. This old antique had been cultivating for many years while Yi Shiwen had only been cultivating for a few years. Even if Yi Shiwen relied on the power of the yin-yang life and death diagram to contend with him, it was still a commendable achievement for everyone. Therefore, they would also want to try if they were in his place. It's useless. Do you think you can contend against me by relying on external strength? The old man sneered and blasted a punch towards Yi Shiwen. His punch crushed the heavens, revealing its sharpness and murderous intention. Everyone was incomparably shocked. Feng Yuan's ultimate backer and the strength of the old ancestor had been completely revealed at this time. His combat strength was far beyond Yi Shiwen's. What do you mean by external force or internal force? As long as you can defeat your opponent, that's enough. You have lived for so long, don't tell me you still don't understand this truth? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. He took a step forward and the aura on his body rose again. It was as if he hadn't used all his strength just now, and it burst forth to the extreme. The void suddenly shook, and endless murderous intent began to splatter. Is he really just an early profound life stage practitioner? Many people looked at him in shock, not daring to believe it at all. You've forced her to this extent for your own selfish interests. Let me do what she didn't do, Yi Shiwen coldly said. He didn't know how Hua Menghan had been living all these years. However, he thought that she must have been living in an unfamiliar environment. He didn't have this ability in the past, and could only watch helplessly as she was taken away. However, things were different now. What did you say? The old man coldly looked at Yi Shiwen. The anger in his heart hadn't subsided yet. He was going to become a laughing stock, and all of this was caused by Yi Shiwen. He couldn't wait to punch Yi Shiwen to death. As for Yi Shiwen's threat, he simply didn't take it to heart. Yi Shiwen was still far from being comparable to him. I think you've really lost your mind. You've gone completely crazy all of a sudden. The old man sneered and blasted a punch. For a moment, the sun and moon lost their luster, and the sky was filled with a sea of fire. This move was exactly the same as Feng Yuan's. However, compared to Feng Yuan, this old man's skill was much more profound. He could even split the sky with a punch. Boom! The fist pressure seemed to have come from the ancient times, and directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. It was going to blow Yi Shiwen up with one punch. However, at this moment, a shocking blade light directly slashed out from the void. It tore the void apart and shattered everything. The shocking blade light slashed down onto the old fogey's fist. Poochie! Blood sprayed out in all directions as a huge gash opened up on the old antique's fist. Even his bones were shattered. This antique kept screaming as he retreated. His eyes were fixed on Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if he was looking at something inconceivable. The void had completely collapsed in front of him, and formed a huge space storm. Everyone opened their magic eyes one after another. Suddenly, they only saw Yi Shiwen dragging a long saber in his hand, exuding a terrifying light. His eyes were cold and ruthless, and a terrifying blade aura raged around his body. Everyone who saw this had goosebumps. Is this just a warrior in the initial profound life realm? How many amazing magic tools does he have? At this time, everyone was already a little desperate. Previously, it was the pseudo-Dao rune, then the yin-yang life and death diagram, and now this peerless murderous saber. Such a peerless murderous weapon was an unattainable existence even in their eyes. It was not something that ordinary people could possess. However, Yi Shiwen's magical tools kept popping up one after another. Was it because they were too poor, or was it because there were too many magical tools of this level everywhere? Even Phoenix King was looking at Yi Shiwen at this time. The emergence immortal exterminating saber in his hand contained a terrifying energy. Even he could feel that it was abnormally terrifying. In his body there was a terrifying power stirring. It was a magic tool. Under the influence of the emergence immortal exterminating saber's aura, it was actually about to awaken. Although it was immediately suppressed by him, it was still enough to make him abnormally shocked. One had to know that with the quality of the magic tool in his body, an ordinary magic tool would not be able to cause him to counterattack at all, let alone awaken it. This was enough to show that the things in Yi Shiwen's hand were not ordinary. Humph! And at this time, Yi Shiwen finally directly attacked. The emergence immortal exterminating saber in his hand directly spat out a shocking blade aura. It was like a falling galaxy hanging from the 9 heavens, directly slashing in the direction of the old antique. The old antique retreated repeatedly. He did not care about the injury on his hand, and repeatedly blasted out fist radiance that filled the sky, wanting to block this shocking blade aura. Boom! An incomparably loud sound was heard, and then the blade aura directly cut through the fist radiance. The void was completely cut, and then the blade aura directly fell on the old antique's arm. The old antique did not even have time to react or dodge, and was directly hit. Bang! With a loud sound, the old antique's arm directly exploded on the spot, turning into a sky full of blood mist. Ah! The old man clutched his severed arm, and screamed unceasingly. His eyes fiercely stared at Yi Shiwen. He was startled and frightened. He didn't dare to imagine that he would be tricked by someone. Moreover, he had never thought that he would be tricked by someone with a dreadful divine tool. If it were not for that peerless ominous saber, Yi Shiwen would definitely not be his match. Even with the protection of the yin-yang life and death diagram, Yi Shiwen would definitely not be his match. He was very confident about this, but there were no ifs in this world. You! The old antique glared fiercely at Yi Shiwen. Humph! Compared to what you did to Menghan, I only collected some interest. If I find out that you are still targeting Menghan, then it will not be as simple as losing an arm. Yi Shiwen said coldly, we, the ancient human race, hope to cooperate with the ancient Phoenix realm, but we will definitely not do it in such a humble way. Then, I will take my leave. Yi Shiwen said to the Phoenix King, and then directly turned into a streamer, disappearing into the horizon. Everyone present on the scene was completely stunned. Obviously, they hadn't expected that the situation would end up like this. No one came out to stop Yi Shiwen. After all, even that antique wasn't a match for him. His arm had been chopped off. So, they were completely frightened. Therefore, nobody came out to stop Yi Shiwen. After a long time, everyone finally came back to their senses. How can this Yi Shiwen be so strong? It's impossible. This was especially true for the people from the ancient desolation. They were incomparably shocked at this moment. They suddenly thought of something. If Yi Shiwen was this powerful, then ordinary experts at the initial stage of the profound life realm would not be his match. Even without the support of Tsang Wang, he had already grown to a sufficiently tyrannical degree. They had to quickly think of a way to let the people in their respective forces know that they should not attempt to provoke the human race in the future. No matter how much the human race had declined, as long as Yi Shiwen and King Tai Tsang were still around, then the human race would still not be an opponent that could be provoked. Even if Yi Shiwen was the only one left, it would still be the same. If they did not have the confidence to kill Yi Shiwen in one strike, then it was best not to casually make a move, so as to avoid attracting Yi Shiwen's thunderous revenge. Yi Shiwen was an existence that had defeated 3 clans in a single night. If someone said that he did not dare to make a move, then even they would not believe such a thing. At this moment there was only one feeling in their hearts, and that was that the ancient human race was going to change. Chapter 1787. This seems so unbelievable. After all, Yi Shiwen was only one person, yet he made them feel as if the ancient desolation was about to change. However, this wasn't a joke for them. In fact, it could be said that Yi Shiwen's deterrence was even greater than that of King Tai Tsang to them. There was no other reason. Although King Tai Tsang was powerful, it was obvious that he couldn't act at any time. In fact, he might even be held back by some powerful existence. Otherwise, King Tai Tsang alone would be enough to annihilate the invading army of the demon race. Numbers were no longer important to experts at King Tai Tsang's level. Moreover, there was a heaven and earth gap between the demon race and the king-level powerhouses. They were like countless ants. As long as they were careful, it would be difficult to pose a threat to them. Therefore, everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they thought of this. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He didn't have the same restrictions as King Tai Tsang. He could attack at will. Moreover, he was an expert at the initial stage of the profound life realm who possessed terrifying strength. Coupled with the magic tools in his hands, no one knew the extent of his true strength. People like that were the most terrifying. At the very least, they were no longer a match for him. Only the old-timers of their clan or the primeval beasts would be able to fight him. Only then would they have a chance. While the big shots of the ancient desolation were discussing, the Phoenix King also reacted. However, he did not feel annoyed. On the contrary, he only had a funny expression on his face. This kid has really been deceived by him. He said it in such a dignified manner. In fact, I'm afraid he has no strength to fight anymore. Although I don't know what level that peerless ominous saber is, I think it can't continuously unleash that kind of saber aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't even need to escape. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. The Phoenix King sighed. In fact, he had deliberately indulged Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, how could Yi Shiwen have the ability to act so presumptuously in the ancient Phoenix world? However, he hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would be so ferocious. In fact, Yi Shiwen had completely surpassed his imagination and control. It was somewhat beyond her expectations. However, she had no choice but to rely on Yi Shiwen's strength to complete this task. Even as the Phoenix King, it was impossible for her to decide everything on her own. Phoenix King silently calculated in her heart and soon guessed Yi Shiwen's situation. Just as he had expected, Yi Shiwen really didn't have the power to fight again at this time. Just 2 blade attacks had almost absorbed all the Zhen Yuan in his body. He had already stepped into the profound life realm and his strength had increased tremendously. His control over the emergence immortal exterminating saber had also reached an unprecedented level. However, the emergence immortal exterminating saber was like a bottomless pit. Even though he had stepped into the profound life realm, he still had no way of fully controlling the emergence immortal exterminating saber. He was still unable to unleash the true power of the emergence immortal exterminating saber. Just 2 slashes had almost absorbed all the real vitality in his body. It was similar to the previous situation. However, in comparison, the same 2 slashes had undergone an earth-shattering change. It was completely different from before. If it was before, even if he unleashed 2 more slashes, he wouldn't be able to do anything to that old antique. He directly rode on the escape light and continuously recovered the exhausted real vitality. Then, he continuously escaped towards the exit. Since Hua Menghan had already escaped from the wedding, there was no point in continuing to stay. At the same time, he was secretly shocked. The foundation of the ancient Phoenix realm was much more profound than he had imagined. During the Desolate Era, even the royal families only had a profound life realm expert. Within the 9-headed fierce beast clan, there was a profound life realm expert. However, that expert had been eliminated by King Tai Tsang at lightning speed. That expert hadn't been able to display his true strength at all. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured and had to escape in a sorry state. These were merely ordinary profound life stage expert. There was no need to even mention those who were the cream of the crop. Compared to the ancient desolation, the ancient Phoenix realm seemed to be stronger. Their foundation was also deeper. It might be due to the fact that the ancient desolation was now fragmented, so they couldn't truly inherit all the resources. However, even so, Yi Shiwen had discovered a problem after he had seen the experts of the ancient Phoenix realm and the other worlds. No matter how few experts there were in the ancient desolation, it was impossible for there to be so few of them. Could it be that he hadn't reached the corresponding level, so he didn't know about them? This wasn't impossible. For Yi Shiwen, who was only in the heaven realm, it was simply impossible for him to come into contact with the circle of profound life realm experts. In fact, they were simply mythical existences to him. They were aloof and remote like dust. Otherwise, how could he have the qualifications to join them? However, it was different now. Yi Shiwen's horizons had suddenly widened after he had stepped into the profound life realm. It was as if he had suddenly broadened his horizons, and had undergone tremendous changes in his nature. Yi Shiwen quickened his pace as he thought of this. If there were really many profound life realm experts in the ancient desolation, then he would have to pay more attention to them. Moreover, Hua Menghan had already escaped from the wedding. It was impossible to bring her back. In fact, he didn't even know where she had gone. It would take a very long time to find her. There was also Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian's figure inexplicably flashed in Yi Shiwen's mind. Slowly, it became clearer and clearer. He lightly sighed. No matter what he had to do now was to make a name for himself in the world. Sometimes, making a name for himself in the world was also the best way to report his safety. He had disappeared for 100 years like he had previously. Perhaps everyone would be worried to death. Yi Shiwen's speed was extremely fast. He had already passed through the space channel in less than half a day's time. The news hadn't reached here yet. Therefore, even though the people guarding the channel were very curious as to why Yi Shiwen had appeared at this time, they didn't stop him. Instead, they allowed him to pass. More importantly, they could clearly feel that a dreadful aura was lingering around Yi Shiwen's body. It was no longer the same as it had been when he had just entered the ancient Phoenix world. Their hearts were palpitating just by looking at him from afar. So, how could they have the courage to stop him at this time? Whoosh! The space in the void distorted violently in the ancient wilderness. Then, a figure jumped out of the distorted space. The space was directly torn apart on the spot. This figure had just appeared for a short while. His hands directly tore open countless golden lights again. The space was once again shattered. Then, his figure jumped into it again. He was already thousands of miles away when he reappeared. For the current Yi Shiwen, it wasn't difficult to directly tear open the space to hurry on his journey. Although it was easy for the opponent to directly destroy the space when he was fighting against them, causing the space to collapse and die, it was still a very good method when he was hurrying on his journey. He was extremely fast. Yi Shiwen had already returned to Mount Qi in the ancient wilderness in less than half a day's time. This place had now become the base camp of the human clan. Countless experts of the human clan were hiding here. This was also the only territory of the human clan that was still completely under the control of the human clan. It was also the only place that the human clan had the ability to protect. However, when he had just approached Mount Qi, Yi Shiwen immediately felt a powerful pressure crushing down on Mount Qi. He immediately reacted. Profound Life Realm. It's a Profound Life Realm expert. Moreover, it's a Profound Life Realm expert belonging to the human clan. How is this possible? How can there still be a Profound Life Realm expert in the human clan? Yi Shiwen was immediately shocked. There were indeed Profound Life Realm experts in the human clan's royal court. However, after the royal court was breached, all of those Profound Life Realm experts were brutally massacred. All of them died, and those old seniors could no longer be seen. However, for a very long time, everyone didn't pay much attention to them. That was because, at that time, there wasn't even a single king-grade expert, let alone a Profound Life Realm expert. The existence of Profound Life Realm experts was still a mythical level for ordinary living beings in the ancient wilderness. Many people might not even have heard of Profound Life Realm experts in their entire lives, let alone seeing one. Therefore, to the human clan at that time, the appearance of a king-grade expert was the best thing that could boost their morale. A king-grade expert could raise the morale of the people even more significantly than a Profound Life Realm expert. The reason why Yi Shiwen was able to become famous in the ancient wilderness in such a short period of time was not unrelated to this mentality. Some of the higher-ups were aware of the existence of Profound Life Realm expert. They naturally knew that a Profound Life Realm expert was needed to truly suppress the human clan. However, no matter how they searched, there didn't seem to be any Profound Life Realm experts of the human clan in the ancient wilderness. The Profound Life Realm experts of other races that were on good terms with the human clan were also unwilling to participate at this time. They would become the target of public criticism, and would become the focus of the demon clan's attack. Therefore, the higher-ups of the human clan could be said to have found nothing. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen was able to make a name for himself in one fell swoop, and become a great figure whose name shook the world. Yi Shiwen was also very clear about the secret behind this. So, who exactly was the owner of the pressure crushing down on Mount Qi now? He looked over. Many living beings and commoners in the Mount Qi region were already shivering and kneeling on the ground at the feet of a Profound Life Realm expert. In the end, who could it be? Furthermore, for him to release his aura so unscrupulously, I'm afraid he doesn't have good intentions. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.